Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto goes missing during the final battle in Wave Country Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for Part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. Damn ninjas, you killed our meal ticket. You guys are dead. Now we're gonna pillage this city and take anything of value. Those cheers and yells could be heard from the gathered thugs and mercenaries in front of Team 7. The only thing separating the Konoha Nins and the rowdy mob were the dead bodies of Zabuza, Momochi, and Haku. Naruto's wary gaze shifted towards the members of his squad. Sakura was supporting a battle-worn Sasuke. He could easily detect the fear that crept into her eyes, dreading the coming conflict. The last Uchiha, meanwhile, was on his last leg. In fact, it was a wonder that he was already conscious again after the beating he had received through the fight with the Hayaton user. His sensei had also seen better days. Fighting off Zabuza had taken its toll on the man's body. And now they should deal with roughly an additional 200 men whose only desire it was to plunder and kill. The blonde hero's fingers swiftly formed his favorite hand sign. Multiple shadow clone jutsu, he poured every ounce of his remaining chakra into this last resort. 10 more blonde genins came into existence, ready for the battle ahead. This also seemed to be the starting signal for the group of thugs on the other side of the bridge. The rows of men started to move, rushing towards the now 11 blonde-haired ninjas blocking their way. Weapons gripped in their hands, the identical-looking kids waited for attackers to come into their range. The advancing mass of enemies came to an abrupt halt, as shuriken and kunai started tearing into their ranks. Many of the metal weapons vanished into smoke after they had hit their intended targets. Still, the hail of steel could only continue for so long, before Naruto and his clones ran out of ammunition. As soon as the raining of weapons had started, it stopped, and the remaining thugs resumed their attack. The blonde genin's counterattack had taken out a good dozen of their adversaries and wounded another dozen of them. Now the clones and the original stood side by side, forming a line, each one holding a kunai in their right hand, waiting for the incoming onslaught. "Sensei, I could use some help here," Databeo shouted an anxious Naruto in the direction of a still unmoving Kakashi Hatake. "Sakura, protect Tazuna and Sasuke. I will help Naruto." After those words, the one-eyed Jonin rushed towards his blonde charge. His Sharingan was already covered by his leaf headband. No longer he had any chakra to spare to support it. Like his student, he took out a kunai from one of his pouches, awaiting the incoming enemies. As he stood side by side with the 10 shadow clones and the original, the two sides clashed violently, and the advancing thugs were once again stopped in their rush forward. Metal collided, and cries of pain and anguish filled the silence. The real battle had just begun. Even exhausted as he was, Kakashi started to tear through the ranks of the bandits like they were nothing, cutting them down one by one. Those untrained men were no challenge for the battle-hardened shinobi at all. The only thought on his mind was to finish this conflict before he was too tired to move. Naruto, on the other hand, was starting to have a hard time with the enemies. He and his clones had gotten in a few early hits at the start, but now all of them were cornered by multiple men. And unlike his sensei, he hadn't years of experience to even the odds. One by one his clones vanished into clouds of smoke after they were hit, till only the original was left behind. A panting Naruto stood in the middle of a small circle, surrounded by about 10 of those damned mercenaries. He had a few shallow cuts from where their weapons had hit him. Small trickles of blood were running down his body. "Is that all you got?" The young shinobi mocked them loudly. A grin formed on the boy's face as he saw what kind of effect his words had on the savage adults around him. One of the thugs rushed forward, a butcher knife in his hand, attempting a horizontal strike at the blonde genin. The assault was blocked by the kunai in Naruto's hand. Then the nin drove his left leg deep into the stomach of the attacker. The man keeled over in pain, before he lost his conscience and collapsed onto ground. Sadly, this action left an opening on the Jinchuriki's left side, a chance that one of his enemies had detected. Naruto's left torso was hit by an underhand strike from a mallet. His small body was propelled upwards through the sheer power of the attack. He flew in a high arc over the crowd below him, and then crashed with his back hard into the railing of the bridge. After that, Naruto's world went black. A hail of arrows landed in front of the first row of battling thugs, making many of them flinch and looking for the culprits of this new assault. On the other side of the bridge, a bulk of villagers could be seen, armed with crossbows, spears, and hatchets. "If you come any further onto our island, the citizens of this country will stop you with everything we've got." Kakashi broke free from his current skirmish and moved himself between those two groups, securing a better position in battle and allowing him to regain his breath. Weapons still drawn, facing the attackers, he was ready for everything that would come next. The ranks of mercenaries shifted and a grim-looking guy exited. He dragged a beaten orange-clad body with him. His left hand was tightly clasped around the throat of the unconscious Naruto. The thug lifted the boy's limp body over the bridge's railing, letting him hang freely above the dark sea, only held by the hard grip of one hand. "Let us pass, or this annoying brat pays the price." The gruff voice of the man that had Naruto's life in his hands could be heard all over the bridge. Just in that moment, Naruto regained his senses. He could feel the constricting sensation around his neck. Immediately he started to shift and wiggle his whole body in a useless attempt to free himself. Not realizing how dangerous his current situation really was, he doubled his efforts to break free. "Hold still, idiot!" With his right hand, the thug slapped Naruto hard on his cheek. What he hadn't taken into account was that the genin almost instantly took his chance and sank his sharp teeth into the attacking man's hand. With a yelp of pain, the mercenary loosened his grip around the boy's throat, and gravity started to take action immediately. Naruto! Panic-fueled shouts came from the top of the giant bridge as the small nin's body spiraled downwards to the thunderous sea. A large splashing sound could be heard as Naruto's body hit the water surface. The onlookers could only watch helplessly as the low tide dragged the struggling genin's body seawards to the horizon. A small frame stirred below the blanket, moving to the left and right in his resting place, just waking up for the first time in days. He was unlucky enough, although, because he hadn't slept in a normal bed but rather a hammock. And so the boy unceremoniously plumped onto the hard wooden floor below him. Not the nicest way to wake up. Ugh, what the hell? Naruto propped himself into a sitting position and started to look around. Something wasn't right here. He couldn't remember this place at all. His eyes looked down onto his own body. Where were his trademark orange clothes? Instead of his jumpsuit, he was now dressed in dark blue pants and a white shirt. Where I am? What I am wearing? And why does this room sway back and forth? Naruto asked no one in particular. You are on a ship, kid. The big lady, that's her name, I'm her captain. One of the finest cargo vessels you can find in the elemental nations, was the proud reply the blonde got. We fished you out of the sea, your hideous orange clothes saved your hide. Got really lucky with that, otherwise you would be dead by now. Naruto's gaze drifted to the direction of the gruff voice that had spoken to him. He could see an older man, probably in his 50s, gray hair and beard, a patch over his left eye, dressed almost in the same clothes he himself currently wore. Remember why you thought it would be a good idea to take a swim that far away from the mainland? The sea dog asked with a loud chuckle. Memories of the recent battle on the bridge flashed through the blonde's mind. Immediately he jumped from his sitting position into a standing one, pumping his fist high into the air. I need to get back to the land of waves, Tebeo. My team is counting on me. The sailor laughed at the boy's antics. Sorry, kid, but we are already far away from that place. You were out 3 days and nights. Whatever happened back there is already over. The next stop is a small port town in the land of lightning. We need to restock supplies there. After that, the lady heads towards the land of water. But Naruto tried to complain, but his objection was cut short. No, but shrimp, be happy that you are alive. It's either lightning or water, the choice is up to you. That was the last reply the blonde got before the captain left the cabin, leaving the boy alone with his thoughts. 5 days later, the vessel reached the port town in the land of lightning. Naruto had decided that if he wanted to return to Konoha, he had to leave the ship here. Lightning Country and the land of fire were connected through dry land. He could at least make his way by foot from here. Still, it would take a few weeks to get back to his homeland. Naruto's immense luck had ensured his survival, but most of his belongings were gone. The only things left in his possession were his leaf headband, Gamachan, and about 2,000 ryo. Hopefully that would be enough to get a few supplies for the long journey home. Also, a map probably wouldn't be such a bad investment. Anyway, he had gotten some clothing from the ship's captain, 3 pairs of white shirts and blue pants, the same uniform the regular sailors wore. It was a start. The city, if you dared to call it that, wasn't big, about 100 buildings and a few warehouses in the harbor area. Naruto easily found a shop that sold supplies and other goods, normally to the traveling through seamen, but it would suit his needs just fine. He bought a black backpack, a few rations including canned food and water, lastly also a map of the elemental nations. With his last money spent on the necessities of his travel, Naruto stood on the western edge of the town, ready to leave. Konoha, wait for me. Uzumaki, Naruto is coming home, Databeo. He pumped his fist straight into the air, his headband tightly clutched in the raised hand. After that little emotional outbreak, he stowed his precious forehead protector safely away in his backpack. It wasn't the best idea, if he was seen wearing the symbol of Konoha traveling through one of the other major nations. Soon he was walking in a steady pace towards his homeland. 2 days had passed since Naruto had entered Lightning Country and started his voyage home. He followed the coastline westwards, as it was the best landmark he had for orientation. The blonde had bought a map, although sadly had forgotten that without a compass the map was almost useless. It wasn't detailed enough to include smaller landmarks, and only major cities and capitals were marked on it. The coastline to his left side was comprised of cliffs and escarpments, while to his right was a softwood forest. This was all he had seen since the start of his journey 2 days ago. Naruto was now particularly thankful for the survival lesson he had had in the academy. Finding water and food, hunting small animals down, setting up traps, making fire without matches or a lighter, and building a shelter with branches and leaves. Those lessons had served him well in the last days. Have to thank Iruka-sensei when I come home, Naruto mumbled to himself. His mind drifted towards Konoha, his senseis and comrades. Boom! A loud explosion ripped the blonde boy out of his thoughts. Now most people would run away or at least stay a safe distance away from such a spectacle, but no, not Uzumaki Naruto. Even in a foreign country, on dangerous terrain, His curiosity got the better of him, and he stalked carefully towards the location from where the sounds emanated. Some smaller explosions could be heard as Naruto made his way towards the source of all the commotion. It took him a minute or two to reach said location. He ducked behind one of the trees and watched the scene before him unfold. In a clearing in the woods stood 4 men, one of them facing the other 3. The middle of the clearing looked like a large explosion had taken place. Rubble was scattered all around, the top layer of earth had been forcefully removed, and on the edges the grass was burnt. The 3 men stood in a triangle formation, all of them clothed the same outfit. Black pants, a dark gray shirt, a bandana in the same color as the shirt, with a metal headplate sewed into it, a white flak jacket over the shirt, and finally dark black glasses that hid their eyes. Naruto didn't recognize the village symbol on the metal plates. Now he regretted that he hadn't listened better to Irika-sensei's lessons. At least he could assume this were Kumogakure shinobi, as it was the most logical choice. Their adversary was a blond man. He had about half of his hair in a ponytail, while the rest of it hung freely from his head and also covered one of his eyes. The choice of clothing he wore was most unusual. An auburn, floor-length robe clung loosely to his body, obscuring even his hands from view. The 3 ninja were already heavy panting while their enemy stood there relaxed and smiling. He lifted his arms and his hands shot out from the sleeves of his robes, starting to form hand signs in fast succession. The blonde was finished almost as soon as he had started, then he pointed his palms outward in the direction of his enemies. It looked like he had strange mouths implanted in his palms. Those hand mouths spat out multiple white batches of an unrecognizable material. As soon as the batches had left the mouths, they formed into small birds and rushed towards the 3 nin on the opposite side of the clearing. It seemed as if those 3 had already experienced with that strange things, because they tried their hardest to dodge them. But in the end it was a futile effort on their side. All 3 were hit several times by the strange birds. Every time one of the flying creatures crashed hard into one of them, it left a white stain on the target. A loud yell of "Katsu!" pierced the silence. After that, another set of explosions rocked the clearing. Smoke rose around the 3 ninjas that were facing the single stranger. Once the sight was clear again, Naruto saw all of them lying on the ground, with large flesh wounds and torn cloths. He was sure all 3 were either dead or would die within the next few minutes. Watching such a brutal, but effective display of power really astonished the young Konoha shinobi. "I know you are there. Come out of your hiding place." And the blond man didn't even look into the direction where the genin was hiding as he spoke. The voice of the victor startled Naruto. Knowing that further concealment would be pointless against such a foe, he composed himself and walked into the clearing, trying his hardest to appear as brave and strong as possible. "Are you going to kill me, like them?" he asked with a small hint of fear in his voice. The blond genin's counterpart only shook his head. "Those 3 ignoramuses and I had some sort of quarrel. They mocked the beauty of my work, so they had to pay for their insults." Naruto took a deep breath, finally calmed down that his life was not at stake here. His face formed a small, sly grin. "You know, those explosive things you did with your hands are kinda cool. You like my art, kid? Art?" The Jinchuriki didn't understand the stranger before him. Wasn't art something like paintings and stuff like that? "Art is an explosion, was the immediate reply the young blonde got. The genin could only nod. He never had heard that detonations could be art, but he liked the strange explanation nevertheless. Explosions were beautiful in their own way and awesome. Let's not forget they are really awesome. "Then yes, I like you, art. That was so cool," Naruto exclaimed in his usual hyper way and gave a thumbs up to the demolition expert. The bomber really started to warm up to the blonde kid before him. At least this guy understood the beauty of his art. "The name is Deidara, and who you are?" He stretched his arm out towards Naruto for a friendly handshake. Their hands clasped together. "Naruto, Uzumaki Naruto, the future Hokage of the Hidden Leaf, Tebeo." After shaking their hands, Deidara eyed Naruto carefully. Normally he would be wary of a Konohagakure shinobi. After all, he was born, raised, and trained in Iwabakure. Konoha and Iwa had a long-standing feud, almost since both villages were founded. But the little blonde ball of energy before him was quite different. He was one of the few who really seemed to admire his handwork. The missing nin hadn't met someone like that since he abandoned his own village years ago. "Could you show me how to make awesome explosions like you do?" pleaded an eager Naruto. When else would he get a chance to learn something so fantastic? Deidara got a stern expression on his face and gazed deep into the blonde's blue eyes. Either of them broke their staring contest for several seconds. Finally the bomber spoke. "If you want to follow the road of the true artist, I could show you a thing or two, I presume. 10 weeks had passed since the fateful incident in the Land of Waves. Naruto Uzumaki had been declared MIA by the Hokage, after the rest of Team 7 returned from their mission. The village leader had warned the citizen of Konoha that he wouldn't tolerate any sort of celebration to party the presumed death of the demon brat. Currently the Chunin Kotetsu Higane and Izumo Kamizuki were on another boring round of guarding Konoha's main gate. Kotetsu shot his partner an angry glare. "Why do you always volunteer the 2 of us for this ridiculous duty, Izumo?" "Because it's an honorable work to do for the village. Furthermore, it's mostly quiet and safe here. Any problem with that?" was the return he got from his friend. Your modest attitude is so not helping us becoming Jonin any sooner. Putting his head into his hands, Kotetsu could only groan. Why was this guy his best friend again? A loud cough pulled both guards out of their musings. Genin Uzumaki Naruto, Ninja Registration 012607, announcing my return from prolonged absence. The voice before them spoke in a monotonous trot. That joke is getting old, brats. The Naruto kid is surely dead by now. Kotetsu replied with barely hidden anger during his whole speech. Some of Konoha's children had found it funny to play the Naruto is coming home trick on the unsuspecting gate guards a few times by now. I am Uzumaki Naruto, Databeo. How else would I know my ninja registration number? Almost shouted the stranger at the two dim-witted Chunin. Both now looked closer at the figure before them. He really had a vague resemblance with the missing genin. They were given a picture of Naruto, as comparison material should the real one arrive back home. That image was pinned onto one of the walls of the gatehouse. Izumo and Kotetsu looked hard at the picture and then back at the blonde guy that had spoken to them. If this was really Naruto Uzumaki, he had hit a growth spurt while he was away. The boy stood with a new height of about 1.55 meters before them. His hair had grown a few centimeters and looked now even wilder and spikier than before his absence. Two long, blonde spikes were bent down and obscured his right eye from their view. His attire consisted of an auburn floor-length robe, with a light gray Uzumaki spiral sewed onto the back side. The robe had a continuous zipper on the front side and was currently zipped wide open. Underneath, Naruto wore a form-fitting mesh shirt, dark orange and black pants, Shippuden style, and a belt with multiple pouches was strung around his waist. A camouflage-colored monocular, that was attached to a black metal rope, hung loosely from his neck, almost looking like some kind of pendant. In one hand he had a black backpack and his one blue eye stared impatiently at the two gate guards waiting for their reply. Finally, having enough of the waiting, Naruto pulled up his mesh shirt a bit, formed something that vaguely resembled a ram sign with his free hand and channeled some chakra. Almost instantly an intrinsic dark black seal pattern started spreading out around his navel. So, do you believe me now, or want to have a nice face-to-face chat with the grumpy fox? He groaned in an annoyed tone. Both Chunin could only nod dumbly. Izumo was the first one to find his voice again. Hokage-sama said he wanted to see you immediately, should you return. Then I'm on my way again. Naruto's voice sounded now much more happy and peaceful again. His mood instantly brightened after his dealing with those gate guards was finished. The blonde slung his backpack over his shoulder, made a sharp turn and started walking towards the Hokage Tower. A small smile was etched onto his face as he made his way through his hometown. He was finally back. People didn't seem to recognize him, even though his most prominent feature, his whisker marks, were still widely visible. Maybe his new hairstyle, combined with the different clothing, made him look really that unrecognizable. They didn't stare or insult him. It was a welcome change indeed. But he was sure that this new behavior wouldn't last long. Sooner or later everything would be back to the same old routine. Roughly 15 minutes of steady walking later, Naruto had finally reached his destination. The massive Hokage Tower was standing right in front of him. He hurried inside, passing stair and hallways, till he finally could see the entrance to the old man's office. Two ninja flanked either side of the large door, both dressed in the standard Konoha Chunin uniform. Naruto stopped right before the entry and reached out for the handle. Where do you think you are going, brat? One of the guardians raised his voice. The Hokage has requested my presence, was Naruto's simple and quick reply. And who do you think you are? The guard seemed visibly annoyed by the blonde boy by now. The genin took a leaf headband out of one of his belt pouches and tied it around his forehead. The two long spikes of his blonde hair although still hung over the headband and continued to obscure half of his right eye. He stared deep into the eyes of the sentry and started speaking. Uzumaki Naruto, now if you excuse me, the Hokage is waiting. Before either of the men could give him an answer, he had already entered the office. Good day, Hokage-sama. This was how the blonde addressed the leader of Konoha as he set foot into the room. Hiruzen Sarutobi was sitting in his chair reading over some paperwork, his smoking pipe in his mouth. As he heard the greeting, he raised his head and looked onto the new arrival. First, the person seemed unfamiliar. He wore a leaf headband, but the Hokage couldn't remember anybody that would dress in such an uncommon style. The blonde, unruly hair, although he could swear he knew somebody with such hair. As soon as the Hokage had seen the ocean blue eyes and the scarred lines on the cheeks, he had realized who had entered his office. His smoking pipe fell out of his mouth and landed with a bang on the table. And then Naruto? Asked the shaking voice of the aged Sarutobi. You've got it, old man. It has been a while, hasn't it? A large grin was plastered onto the Jinchuriki's face as he spoke those words. The Hokage took a few seconds to compose himself, coming over the shock of seeing somebody whom he presumed to be dead. Once he was over the worst, he stood up, placed his hands on the wooden table in front of him, and then started shouting at the genin. Where the hell were you? Oh, here, there and everywhere. It took all of his control not to break out in laughter as he gave the Hokage this bullshit reply. The aged man crashed his fist onto the wooden table. That's not the time for your silly jokes, Naruto. The anger in Sarutobi's voice could almost be felt as he had unconsciously released a bit of killing intent into the room. Naruto didn't even shiver although. Get a grip on yourself, old man. No need to fly off the handle. Tebeo, it was really good to see the Hokage again. Naruto had enjoyed the show until now, but it was probably better if he would finally give the Hokage some answers. You surely remember how I have gone missing, don't you? After receiving a knowing nod, the blonde genin continued with his story. A cargo vessel fished me out of the sea. Took me 3 days to regain conscious again. Afterwards the captain dropped me off somewhere in Lightning Country. Nowhere important, just a small port town. Can't even remember the name of the place. The rest then was just walking home. Only took me the next 8.5 weeks to get back to Konoha. Anything else you want to know? Naruto hoped the Hokage would be pleased with this short explanation. He didn't want it to go any deeper into the subject, if he could avoid it. How did you gain money, while traveling? Was the first question the blonde received from the village leader. Did some freelancing, taking out bandits, guard duties, transporting things and easy stuff like that. Sarutobi was a bit astonished by that casual reply, but it wasn't so surprising at all. Naruto had to watch for himself since he was 5 and doing freelance ninja work was better than being a thief or a robber. Did you meet somebody interesting while traveling the world? Asked the Hokage innocently. That was one of the topics that Naruto had dreaded. Now he had to lie straight to the face of the old man. Not that it was avoidable now, there was no way he would rat out his travel companion. Flashback. It was early in the morning, around 5:30 a.m. After setting a camp up here yesterday evening, Naruto and Deidara had already packed in all their belongings again and were ready to continue their travel. We are about 5 or 6 hours away from Konoha. Our ways part here on. The missing Nin was sitting on one of his clay birds, while he spoke those words. Can't you come with me? You would like Konoha, I promise, Databeo. Naruto tried to convince the blonde bomber with an almost pleading tone and sad look on his face. We talked about it, didn't we? Even if I could come with you, IWA would raise hell onto Konoha for housing me. Also, you know I don't really like Leaf Ninja. You are the exception, my little apprentice. The young man took a deep breath. Don't tell anybody that you traveled with me. Your village won't like it, especially once they find out that their Jinchuriki was influenced by some random missing Nin. You aren't some random missing Nin, Dainai-san. You're the world best demolition expert, at least till I surpass you. The blonde genin pumped his fist into the air to emphasize the statement he truly believed in. Deidara smiled at Naruto's antics. He had really become like his little brother in those past 2 months. He ruffled the other blonde's hair a final time. Then his clay bird took off, made a sharp turn and flew steadily into a direction that would bring him far away from Konoha. Just promise me you won't tell anybody about me. I don't want you to get hurt. And never forget, art is an explosion, Tebeo. Naruto finished the sentence his role model had started. After that he began walking towards the Leaf Village, finally heading home. His thoughts still lingering on the person that would shape his life like nobody else. Flashback Kai. Not really, a few bandits here and there, but they didn't stand a chance against the almighty Uzumaki Naruto. He hoped that that reply would satisfy the Hokage. Hey old man, did my team survive the Wave Country? That was something Naruto was genuinely interested in, and it would hopefully distract the Hokage from asking any more questions. After your demise, Team 7 and the villagers were able to drive the mercenary force away. There were no further causalities on their side. A gasp of relief left Naruto. Our client even honored your sacrifice, naming the bridge after you. The Great Uzumaki Bridge sounds good, I would say. That news brought a proud smile on Naruto's face. Could you please tell Tazuna and his family that I'm alive and well? The old leader gave a small nod, then he took a deep puff from his pipe. There is something else we need to discuss. Naruto, I can't place you back into your old squad, so my vacant spot had already been filled? The blonde boy didn't even sound surprised. He had expected that much already. Back then, after you were presumed missing, my advisors brought to my attention that it would hinder the last Uchiha's growth if his team was incomplete. So another genin was transferred to fill in for you. Naruto crossed his arms before his chest and took on a thoughtful expression. Which means I have no team and no sensei, just great. But this is where you are wrong. I can't place you back into your old team. There is, however, a free position in the squad, from where I took your replacement. A loud laugh could be heard through the room. So I'm my replacement's replacement? That's almost ridiculous. Who are my unfortunate teammates then? As of now you're a member of teammate led by Kurina Yuhi. Your new teammates are Shino Aburame and Hinata Hyuga. The Hokage nearly ceremoniously proclaimed. You can meet them later on today. 4:00 p.m., Training Ground 42. That should be everything for now. Understood, old man. Naruto gave a small bow. He turned around ready to leave, but abruptly stopped after the second step towards the door. He had suddenly remembered an important topic he almost forgot. Something else on your mind? The blonde genin turned back, to stare deeply into the Hokage's eyes. To say Naruto's gaze was icy would be the understatement of the year. The happy attitude that he had a few moments ago was clearly gone. The whole room temperature seemed to drop a few degrees. Why did you hide my heritage from me, Hokage-sama? The way he addressed the old man and the tone of his voice were threatening. He even created a small portion of killing intent to show that he was not pleased with the information hidden from him. What do you mean? The old leader appeared calm, but that was only on the outside. In reality, he was quite tense. What if Naruto had somehow found out about his father? That wouldn't end well for the Hokage. He was sure of it. My family name isn't for show only, isn't it? I'm a member of the Uzumaki clan, originated from the land of whirlpools. Naruto's eyes never left the aged man while he asked his question. He had learned this during the first day of traveling with Deidara. After the bomber had agreed to teach him a few things and Naruto had explained his whole situation, the topic of his family name somehow popped up. Flashback. You're an Uzumaki, right? So you are some kind of clan prodigy? Questioned a curious Deidara. Clan? What are you talking about? I'm just a no-name orphan. The slightly agitated genin replied. No hard feelings here, I'm an orphan myself, kid. But the Uzumakis were once a famous clan, before their destruction. Lectured the bomber. I have a name, and it isn't kid. So what? Probably just a coincidence that I have the same surname like some exterminated clan. This wasn't the kind of topic Naruto was comfortable with. The missing nin stifled a laugh. What do they teach you brats in Konoha? If you're named Uzumaki, you are a clan member, simple as that. It's a sacrilege to use a clan's name if you aren't related. Nobody sane would dare to commit that crime. You said they were destroyed, didn't you? So who would give a damn? The new turn of events had gotten Naruto interested in the current talk. Probably he really was from that dead clan after all, he could hope at least. Even if he was the last one, it would still be some kind of family, something he longed for since he could remember. Their former allies, their old enemies, or the spirits of the dead themselves. Konoha and your clan were quite close, by the way, once, before Whirlpool's destruction. Whirlpool? That was Naruto's educated reply. The next few hours traveling were spent with Deidara's explanation on the Uzumaki clan and the land of whirlpools. In the end, Naruto was convinced that he had in fact a clan. That was something the Hokage had to answer for. Flashback. Kai. Sarutobi relaxed visibly. It wasn't as bad as he had assumed. This was a situation he could handle after all. You are right, you are an Uzumaki, most probably the last one. That's the reason why I didn't tell you anything about your family line. I didn't want you to get up your hopes up to find any family members, because likely there are none. Furthermore, I couldn't risk that you would leave, searching the world for your family. You are important to Konoha, Naruto. I know that much already. Konoha won't let their precious Jinchuriki escape, he almost spat out. And the Uzumakis were destroyed by IWA, Kumo and Kiri forces during the Second Shinobi World War. Naruto baled his fists in anger. Damn it! I had the right to know it. He shouted in rage, his eyes shut tight. I'm sorry, Naruto. In retrospective, I probably should have told you about it. I wasn't sure if you would understand it though. The Hokage took in a sharp breath, preparing himself for the lie he was going to feed the boy now. Your mother was an Uzumaki, a traveling kunoichi. You were born while she stayed in Konoha. She was killed by the Kyuubi during the rampage it caused. There are no known records about your father, although. Thank you for the full story. I will take my leave then, Hokage-sama. And with those last words, Naruto left the office. He wasn't sure if he could believe the story about his parents. It sounded like a plausible scenario, but the Hokage had lied about his heritage before. After the blonde genin had left the Hokage tower, he still had about 3.5 hours to spend till he should meet his new team. Starting to walk into a certain direction, he wanted to visit his apartment complex. His room probably was already rented to somebody else, but a look wouldn't hurt. The atmosphere around him was now obvious different. People stared and murmured behind his back again. Either they now recognized him with his headband on, or one of the guards had spread the word of the demon's return. Some people openly glared at him, or insulted him. In fact, it was worse than what he was used to. Maybe because he had the gall to be still alive. About 20 minutes later, Naruto was on his way to get something to eat. His hunch had been right. His former flat was already occupied by somebody else, his few belongings long gone. It wasn't like he had lost something that was valuable, or something he was emotionally attached to. The only thing he owned that would qualify for that category was his precious headband. Still, it hurt to know that people wanted him gone so bad. He had decided a few bowls of ramen would be the right thing now, to lift his dampening mood. 3 bowls of miso, please, was Naruto's casual order as he entered his favorite food stand, Ichiraku Ramen. Coming up, yelled the busy chef from behind the counter. 2 minutes later, 3 steaming hot bowls of miso ramen stood before the hungry boy. Tucci finally could take a good look at his customer, and nearly dropped his wooden spoon. Naruto, my boy, is that truly you? Believe it! Oh, how I missed you, godly ramen. A quick itadakimasu later, Naruto dug into his beloved food. The whole question from the stand's owner was completely missed by the boy. Only the broth in front of him was now important. After finishing his lunch, Naruto retold his adventure to Tucci and the newly arrived Ayame. Both of them were quite happy that their favorite customer was alive and well. Saying his goodbye, Naruto headed towards the final location he wanted to visit, before meeting with teammate Kurina Yuhi was currently standing before the Hokage, and Anbu had informed her that the village leader would require her presence. You have sent for me, Hokage-sama? Indeed, Kurenai. I have finally found someone to complete your squad again. The sensei of Team 8 was almost ecstatic after hearing the news. With only 2 rookie gen in her team was refrained from taking higher level missions. The only thing they did for the last 8 weeks was standard training and D-ranks. And who is my new charge? Asked she with hope in her voice. Uzumaki Naruto was the quick reply she got. Those words shocked her to the core. Everybody had assumed the boy was dead by now. She took a few seconds to compose herself, after that revelation had hit her, and then inquired. When did he return? Where was he for the last 10 weeks? The old leader took about 5 minutes to bring Kurenai up to date on the whole Uzumaki situation. Hokage-sama, isn't it normally a standard procedure for a shinobi, who spent so much time in enemy territory to receive a mind scan? The worried Jonin asked finally. Under normal circumstances you would be right, but you have to take his status as Jinchuriki into account. No Yamanaka has ever performed one of their techniques on a host, nobody could predict the results. I'm not willing to risk any shinobi for a task that could serious harm or kill said shinobi. The Hokage clarified with a stern expression. So it's my new job to watch over him, looking out for any indicators that he is a threat to the village or even a possible spy, among other things, yes? Here are his files, read them carefully. I await an update at the end of the week. The Hokage handed her a folder with documents. Your meeting with him is scheduled for today, 4:00 p.m., Training Ground 42. And with that the conversation had ended. Kurenai headed back outside the tower to inform her team of their new companion. She knew one thing for sure, that arrangement would cause troubles. Naruto still had 2 hours till meeting his new comrades. The blonde boy had already reached the last destination he wanted to visit before heading to the training grounds, and now took a long look at the huge building that held so many memories for him. Then he stepped inside. Carefully he walked through the hallways of the academy, looking for the classroom of the first graders. Finally he could hear Iruka-sensei's lecturing voice coming out of one of the rooms. His hands formed a quick ram hand sign, and in the place of the male genin suddenly stood a busty, grinning blonde bombshell, clad in a form-fitting black bikini. Swiftly he entered the classroom. All eyes drifted to the newcomer that had stepped into the class. Did you miss me, Iruka-kun? Questioned a sexy, sultry voice. Said man could only stare in pure shock at the transpiring events. First he wanted to yell, because he had to see this indecent jutsu again. But as soon as he realized the implications of the situation, his mind froze and the only thing he did was to stare at the blonde female. Think I broke him? Could be heard between the loud laughs coming from Naruto. But the blonde genin was also in for a surprise, as he was almost tackled down by a blur that glomped him hard. Boss, you're alive! Shouted a frantic Konohamaru, as he embraced his role model. A cloud of smoke erupted around those two and the blonde girl was replaced by the original Uzumaki Naruto. Missed you too, Konohamaru-chan. A still laughing Naruto replied, while he patted the brown-haired kid's head. Finally the academy teacher had snapped out from his shock. Class, you're dismissed early today. After hearing that statement, all students stormed out of the room, leaving only Iruka, Naruto, and Konohamaru behind. More than the next hour the genin spent retelling his travels to his ex-sensei and his unofficial student. Iruka was astonished on how good the blonde boy had handled himself for the past 2 months, while Konohamaru really enjoyed the stories of his idol's adventures. The whole time Naruto never mentioned his secret traveling companion, like he had promised to Deidara. So guys, I need to head out, meeting me new team. See ya soon. And with that Naruto jumped out of one of the classroom windows, rushing towards Training Ground 42. Not fair, I wanted to see your new jutsu, boss. Shouted Konohamaru after him. Training Ground 42 was a simple, grass-covered, fairly huge clearing surrounded by a thick forest, located on the outskirts of Konoha, in the direct neighborhood of the famed and feared Training Ground 44. Uzumaki Naruto was currently sitting in the middle of it, cross-legged and deep in meditation. Team 8 had finally reached the intended meeting place, almost 15 minutes late. The reason therefore was fairly simple. Kurenai had told her two genin that they would get a third team member again. After mentioning who was their new comrade, Hinata Hyuga had promptly fainted at the news and it had taken quite a while to wake her up. The black-haired jonin wasn't sure if the Hyuga heir would be able to function correctly with her crush as new teammate, but probably the blonde could pull the girl out from her shy shell. Something Kurenai wasn't able to do, no matter how hard she tried for the past few months. All three of them were surprised as they saw the mediating Naruto sitting in the middle of the training ground. He was not like they had expected. No orange clothing, no loud boasting, no hyperactivity, just sitting there as still as a statue. The blonde raised his head and looked from his sitting position over to his new team. His gaze wandered over them all, from his Jonin sensei to the stoic Aburame, and lastly to the currently blushing Hyuga. You're late. Naruto voiced his opinion in an amused tone. Still not as bad as Kakashi sensei though, only 15 minutes. Naruto raised himself from the ground and started walking towards his dumbfounded team. They hadn't awaited such a greeting from him, but he wasn't the number one surprised ninja for nothing. Kurenai fumed a bit. The blonde had just compared here to the chronically late Kakashi Hatake. She knew that she had to rectify this misunderstanding now, Otherwise the blonde would believe that she had a habit similar to the one-eyed Jonin. She really didn't want to be compared to the lazy pervert, but before she could give a reply someone else spoke up. We're sorry that you had to wait for us, Uzumaki-san. Why we were late, you may want to ask. Well, because something important had acquired our immediate attention. Although everything is perfectly fine now, so there is nothing to worry about for you. The Aburame gave as overlong answer. Hinata meanwhile tried to hide her embarrassment. She had immediately remembered that she was the reason why Team 8 was slightly late. Her head sunk partially into her coat, and she moved halfway behind Kurenai-sensei. No need for formalities, Shino, just call me Naruto, plain and simple, said the blonde, while he was still moving towards the other 3 individuals occupying the training ground. I will try to remember that, Naruto-san, replied the ever-stoic Aburame. The addressed teammate could only shake his head in wonder. The 4 stood finally face to face as Naruto raised his voice again. So sensei, what are the main functions this team normally performs? Deidara had told him that most teams were specialized in some area and he wanted to know how he would fit into his team's role. His new sensei stared in wonder at the young boy. Nothing in his files had indicated that he was that insightful. Probably his unintended field trip had had some positive consequences? Team 8 was formed as tracking and information gathering unit, mainly because the clan techniques of Hyuga, Aburame and Inuzuka were especially suitable for such tasks. Naruto gave a small nod before he replied. My shadow clones should be able to help out with this goals quite good, especially with their ability to return memories to the user. Finding out that special ability of his clones was quite funny indeed, but had hurt badly. Flashback. 5 of Naruto's shadow clones stood in a clearing, side by side, their faces distorted in concentration, hands forming a ram hand sign. Sweat was dripping down their faces, when the 5 finally had enough. They had trained different ways how to explode for the last 3 weeks, and still it didn't lead to any real results. Arg, we will never get this down, guys. The annoyed clone shouted out loud. Already giving up on art, my pupil, Deidara walked out of the forest into the clearing. This isn't getting us anywhere. Try it for yourself, Dei-sensei, if you think it's so easy, Tebeo. The blonde copy yelled, seriously angry at the lack of progression. You have to work hard to understand true art. It took me years to reach my level of enlightenment. But don't give up the hope. I believe in your way of the artist, Naruto-chan. The blonde bomber patted the copy's head lightly during his speech. Suddenly Deidara could feel an intensification of chakra nearby. His eyes wandered to one of the other clones, who were still concentrating hard to compress their chakra. One of the other 4 copies had lost all his color, and his body looked strangely distorted. That would be the last thing he ever saw. Then an explosion rocked the clearing. A few hundred meters away deep in the woods, both blondes had set up their camp. The real Deidara and Naruto currently lay there on the forest floor, their faces contorted in pain. Ow! That hurt. Hey wait, why the hell do I even know how it feels to be blown apart? Shouted in amazed Naruto. Flashback. Kai. Kurenai nodded at the conclusion the blonde had drawn. Your shadow clones will be a nice addition to the team. What I wanted to ask you is, how many of them can you make, Naruto? The genin looked like he was deep in thought after hearing the question, then he answered. Between 45 and 60 who have sufficient chakra to be useful. Quite some more with the help of my tenant. The black-haired jonin was shocked at how many solid clones the genin could create. Probably even the Hokage couldn't make that many. The topic of the QB scared her though. She leaned forward to the boy and whispered into his ear. Are you sure you want to discuss your special condition before your teammates? Naruto looked at his sensei, then his teammates, a serious expression on his face. If you allow it, sensei, I would like to tell them about my burden. You should know that I used it subconsciously during my last mission, so they will see it sooner or later. If that moment comes, it is better for them to know about it beforehand. It could affect their combat readiness. Kurenai could understand his reasoning, so she gave Naruto the answer he deserved. You have my permission to tell them everything you want. After all, it's your secret, and only you and the Hokage can freely speak about it without punishment. Hinata and Shino were both puzzled by the discussion between their sensei and new teammate. What kind of secret were they going to learn? Both watched Naruto with curiosity, waiting that he would tell them about it. I am the QB, the blonde said with an unemotional voice. The rest of Team 8 were baffled. Kurenai didn't understand why Naruto would talk like that. Surely he knew the difference between the prison and the prisoner. Shino thought that Naruto was trying to prank them somehow. What else could be the purpose of such a ridiculous statement? And Hinata? Somehow it made sense. She knew that most people hated her crush for some incomprehensible reason. But she was sure that he wasn't some kind of monster, and he wasn't clearly not evil. If he really was the 9-tailed fox demon, Konoha would already be burning to the ground for everything they did to him. Naruto stifled a laugh. You should see your faces. He took on a much more stern expression. Okay, the fun is over, now on to the serious matters at hand. The blonde took a deep breath. I am not the QB, as you have already guessed. But still the former statement had some truths in it. Whatever you think you know about the beast's demise is a lie. In fact, the Yondaime Hokage didn't kill it. How should he have done that feat in the first place? The QB is more or less just chakra with a consciousness and a physical form. And you can't kill chakra. So he did the next best thing. He sealed it away by putting the chakra beast into a newborn baby. Naruto took a look at his two teammates. Both seemed to have caught on. Yes, the Yondaime sealed the demon into me on that fateful day, the 10th of October, more than 12 years ago. I am Konoha's resident Jinchuriki, the blonde boy said with a heavy voice. Naruto was awaiting some outrageous yells or hateful glares, but nothing like that ever came. Both of his new comrades seemed to be deep in thought over what he had told them. Shino's expression was unreadable, while Hinata had a deep look of sadness engraved onto her face. The Aburame was the first one, who raised his voice to speak his opinion, after he carefully had analyzed Naruto's statement. This is the reason you are generally disliked by Konoha's population, because they only see you as resurrected representation of the terrible nine-tailed beast, Naruto-san? Receiving a small nod from the blonde, he continued his speech. You are no more the Kyuubi than I am a bug. Just because our bodies house some other living entity, it doesn't make us said being. Hinata was silent through the whole ordeal. Now she fully understood why people hated her idol. She had to reassure him that she saw him for nothing more than the person he was. Not the Kyuubi, a demon or something else. The Hyuga girl took all courage she could find in herself together and spoke. As Shino is right, and Naruto-Keikuin. You're just a normal human being with a terrible burden. The next second, both genin found themselves embraced by an emotional Naruto. Thank you guys, you don't know how much that means to me. Databeo he was really moved that both of them had so easily accepted him, even after knowing his darkest secret. The Hyuga heiress meanwhile had other problems. Being fiercely hugged by Naruto had certain effects on her. The brunette's face had turned a dark shade of neon red and she was already on the verge of fainting. Finally her eyes rolled back into her head, and she fell unconscious. Their sensei couldn't suppress a giggle as she saw the female teammate going limp in Naruto's arms, and then watching said blonde going into full panic mode over the girl's blackout. However, she had no idea how she should explain this event to him, without exposing a certain degree of the Hyuga's feelings to him. A panic-stricken Naruto had placed the brunette on the ground and was currently trying to wake her up from her sudden coma. He had moved one of his hands to her forehead in an attempt to feel if she had fever. After all, her head was very, very red. Then he tried to shake her awake, but nothing had worked so far. Naruto-san, you should avoid close body contact with Hinata for now. She is an extremely shy person and it takes her a while to get comfortable around a new comrade, like you. Just let her rest for now, because she will wake up by herself eventually. The short explanation that the Aburame spoke in his usual monotonous voice calmed Naruto finally down. The blonde had his hands behind his head and rubbed his neck sheepishly. I'm sorry for that, just got overwhelmed, I think. He remembered how Deidara had found out about his tenant. Flashback. Both blondes were currently walking side by side through a tundra-like landscape in the land of frost. They had just crossed the borders from Lightning Country to Frost 2 days ago without problems. Out of the blue, Deidara dropped the bombshell onto his unsuspecting companion. You're a Jinchuriki, aren't you, Naruto? The blonde genin immediately tripped and fell face first into the cold dirt. At first it looked like he was in a catatonic state, but then as fast as he had fallen down, the boy was on his legs again, staring with barely hidden fear into his counterpart's eyes. I don't know what you are talking about, Dei-sensei. No need to lie about this to me. I had already contacted 2 demon hosts before I met you. One of them could even be described as my friend, so it's not like I would hate you for your burden, the bomber clarified. Naruto's face instantly brightened up. You don't hate me? You promise? Sure, I promise it, if that's what you want. So which one is it? Asked a curious Deidara. The Nine Tails Kyuubi, replied the genin cautiously. How did you find out about it, sensei? The missing nin chuckled hard. Really? Naruto, you can make an almost unending amount of shadow clones, while I barely can make 5. Then you have stamina like a herd of wild bulls, and lastly I have seen how fast your bruises and cuts heal after our training sessions. Deidara took a small breath before he continued with his explanation. First I thought it was some sort of Kekai Genkai, but in the end the similarities to the other Jinchuriki I have met convinced me that you are one. Most hosts have greater chakra and stamina reserves than normal ninja and often some kind of special ability linked to their beast. Did you really think I would abandon you because of something like that? Small tears of joy trickled down the boy's face. Thanks that you accepted me, sensei. Naruto spoke between sobs. Cherish those who accept and understand you, kid, and try to ignore those who can't. They aren't worth your time. Was the advice Deidara gave him that day. Flashback Kai. After about 5 minutes in Dreamland, Hinata returned to the living. She was embarrassed about the whole incident. But Naruto assured her that he understood her shyness and would try to hold his distance from her, till she would be comfortable enough with him around. It was an arrangement the heiress could live with, for now. Kurenai rose her voice again, after everything had cooled down. Are there any other skills I should be aware of, Naruto? I have learned tree and water walking. Furthermore, I have created a new technique while traveling. A proud Naruto exclaimed. His new sensei was pleased. He already knew the basic chakra control exercises. She was also quite interested in the new jutsu he mentioned. Care to show me your new skill? The blonde nodded eagerly, formed a cross-hand seal and yelled Shadow Clone Jutsu in a poof of smoke. Two additional blonde genins stood in the training field. Both clones eyed each other carefully. Although Naruto himself didn't seem too happy about this turn of events, he mumbled something inaudible under his breath and punched one clone out of existence. The other clone rushed into the middle of the clearing and formed a ram hand sign. He closed his eyes and a second later a small explosion, about 1 meter in diameter, rocked the training ground. Patches of dirt were blown around and the grass where the clone had stood were burnt slightly. Naruto's two teammates were astonished about this display and even his sensei was perplexed. She knew a vague similar technique was known in the Hidden Leaf village, but that a genin could come up with something like that was a really incredible feat. Naruto on the other hand was not pleased at all. My stupid chakra control really sucks, he shouted in anger. Not 2 seconds later, he had created another clone and the copy already was on his way towards the first clone's explosion site. The second explosion was vastly different. With a deafening bang, dirt was blown through the whole clearing. After the dust had settled down, in the place of the clone was now a circular spot, roughly 4 to 5 meters in diameter, where the grass was completely gone and the bare earth below was exposed. That was beautiful. To Bayo, that was his current maximum for an explosion, if everything worked right. Naruto turned around to face his team only to see all three of them staring in shock at him. Kurenai was baffled. The first explosion was small but still quite harmful if somebody would get caught in it, but the second one was really different. Everybody in the blast radius would be surely dead and even farther away the debris from the explosion would cause some harm. And the blonde genin himself seemed to be ecstatic about it. That could be dangerous, especially if he could make a small army of clones who all could blow up like that. With a stern voice she started speaking. Naruto, you won't use this jutsu during training with your comrades. You could kill them easily with such destructive power. In fact, I want you to be really careful with this technique. Understood, sensei? Naruto replied calmly. He knew himself that this jutsu wasn't something to play around with, and he had to use it cautiously around others. Now I want to know what was your problem at the first time and why did you rant about your chakra control? His sensei inquired. You see, Kurenai-sensei, I have so much chakra that my control is really horrible. I hardly get the number of clones I want. Most times one more or less than expected appears. It takes me about 1 or 2 seconds to concentrate the chakra for the detonation, and sometimes, like in my first try, the explosion is just a dud. Naruto explained his situation. I think I understand your problems. Anything else you want to show me? The black-haired jonin asked patiently. How about my first self-created jutsu, Databayo? Naruto was now all hyper and happy again with the possibility to show off another of his skills. Sure, why not? Kurenai was positively surprised by the blonde. He had already 2 self-made techniques at such a young age. Probably he was a diamond in the rough even though his academic grades suggested otherwise. Hearing the exchange of words, Hinata blushed heavily and Shino paled. Both knew what kind of skill Naruto wanted to display now. They had seen the jutsu several times during the academy, mostly at Irika or Mizuki-sensei's expenses. This would surely get some undesirable reaction from their sensei. A shout of sexy jutsu later a naked blonde beauty hulled in wisps of smoke stood in the clearing. Kurenai paled. What kind of indecent jutsu was that? She punched Naruto softly on the head, and the transformation disappeared. Are you some kind of pervert already? What use should such a jutsu have? She shouted at her charge. The blonde laughed sheepishly, while holding the small bump on his head. Hey, even the old man was knocked out by it. It's very effective against most men. The perfect prank jutsu indeed. His explanation ended with a few giggles as the boy remembered his former exploits. The jonin's sweat dropped. The blonde was not a pervert, just a mischief maker after all. And in some way he was right. Against most men it could work quite well, still she disliked the whole idea of the jutsu. You won't use that thing while around me again, understood? She gave him an angry glare, during her speech to get the message across. The scared genin nodded his head vigorously. Won't do that again. Understood, sensei. If this is everything we will meet here again, tomorrow morning 8 o'clock a.m. for training. Good night, you three. With those last words Kurenai left the training ground. Shino and Hinata followed her right away, all three making their way back to the village. Naruto meanwhile remained in the clearing. First he wanted to follow his new team, but then he remembered that he had nowhere to go. He started to drift into his thoughts. Where should he go? A hotel could work, but the employees there would only give him dirty stares. The other options were to ask Irika-sensei for a place to sleep or go to the Hokage, who would then organize something for him. But was that really what he wanted, relying completely on somebody else to solve all his problems? His eyes drifted towards his backpack, which he had placed under one of the trees surrounding the training ground, when he had arrived first here. That was the time he made his decision. For now, he would continue to live like he had for the last 2 months. He could camp somewhere in the woods nearby using his sleeping bag. It wasn't the most comfortable solution, but nobody would disturb him out here and he could train whenever he wanted. Not a bad deal after all. Hinata had arrived at the Hyuga compound after 20 minutes of walking. The brunette moved through the compound, while a small smile was adorning her lips. Today she was in an exceptional good mood. After all, Naruto was alive and had returned to Konoha. But the best part was that he was now her new teammate. Probably this would finally give her the chance she sought for so long. Soon she was starting to think about all the new possibilities that had opened up for her. The stern voice of Heishi Hyuga brought her back from her daydreaming. "Daughter, care to explain why you seem so happy today?" Under the cold gaze of her father, Hinata started to squirm. "My team G got finale a third member T2-san." The young heiress stuttered out. Her father gave only a small nod before he started to speak again. "Can't you get rid of your annoying stuttering habit? This is embarrassing for a proud Hyuga of your standing." "So who is this new teammate?" Hinata looked down. Her father had ridiculed her again. Couldn't he be more supportive of her? Uzumaki Nnaruto, she could hear that her father took in a sharp breath of air. "You shouldn't associate with such a person more than it is necessary. He is far beneath you. I hope you can remember that, my child. Furthermore, he is dangerous and unpredictable," lectured the icy voice of Hayashi, his daughter. "Be because of the Kyuubi too-san?" Hinata asked fearfully. "So they told you about IT, you should know what to do. Remember to not disgrace our clan, Hinata." That were his parting words to her, before he turned around and left. After the encounter with her father, Hinata had lost all hunger she had. So she marched straightway to her room and then started to make herself ready for the night. Her good spirit was already dampening. Her father had to put her down again. Her self-esteem was already quite low, but still Hayashi Hyuga could always put another dent into it. Furthermore, he was like most people in the village, hating her idol for something which was totally out of Naruto's control. A part of her wanted to cry, but she refused to give in to that desire. Till that meeting with her father, her day had gone really well. She wouldn't let him put her down so much. At least she could speak and interact with Naruto constantly from now on. There was nothing her father could do against that. With those thoughts, Hinata fell asleep. 3 days had passed since Naruto's return. Every day he had spent with training, mostly trust and teamwork exercises with Hinata and Shino, to integrate him better into his new team. Both of them were kinda weird, but he started to like them. 1 or 2 D-rank mission after their daily training. For now he still lived in the woods surrounding Training Ground 42. The blonde had sent a few transformed clones out every day to get him food and what else he needed from the village. After being away for so long, he just couldn't stand their nasty stares, and so he had used this as a way to avoid them. The first day he also had gone to Irika-sensei and gotten a list of books, which he should have read during his academy days. Naruto sent a transformed clone to the public library since then, and a copy of him read 1 book a day and dispelled in the evening. After that, the blonde always had a headache for about half an hour. Kurenai-sensei had shown him the basics to dispel genjutsu, something he had failed almost epically to reproduce. With his enormous chakra reserves and low chakra control, he was quite susceptible to genjutsus. Furthermore, he had learned through his sensei that he probably would never be able to use any of the illusionary techniques at all. They needed almost as precise control as medical jutsus. That was nothing he was too sad about, though. He was more a man for solid arguments, and not some mind tricks. Today would finally be the first day where he could spar with his teammates. Naruto was excited. He could test his skills against theirs. He had no illusions, though. Without his explosions and his meager taijutsu abilities, he would have to work hard to put up a decent fight against them. In his first fight, he would have to face Hinata. Both stood at the opposite side of the clearing, while Shino and their sensei would watch the fight from the sidelines. His Hyuga opponent stood in her Juken stance while Naruto was quite relaxed, his hands already forming his favorite hand sign. "No clones, Naruto. I want to judge your combat abilities and yours alone. You can begin anytime you want," said the black-haired Jonin with a hint of glee. The young genin now was almost sweating bullets. His clone had read a book about Konoha's clans yesterday, and now he knew perfectly what kind of skills the Hyuga had. Without clones he was so dead, still he wouldn't give up without fighting back. So he slipped into his impromptu stance and waited for Hinata's attack. Moving in first without his support army would be suicide. The Hyuga girl meanwhile eyed him carefully, her bloodline limit already activated. She wasn't sure what to do, because she didn't want to hurt Naruto, and after Kurenai-sensei forbade him the use of shadow clones, he was an easy target now. "Come on, Hinata, show me how strong you are. No need to hold back, I can take quite a few hits." The blonde shouted across the clearing and flashed on of his famous smiles towards her. With this sort of encouragement, Hinata rushed forward towards her adversary. She was greeted by a barrage of kunai and shuriken. With steps to the right and left, the girl almost danced around the flying weapons. As soon as she was in melee range, she started her onslaught. The first few strikes were blocked by Naruto, still they closed some of the tenketsu points in his arms. His movement started to slow down, and then she crushed his defense. Seconds later he was lying on the ground with a pain-contorted face. Everyone was shocked. Shino and Kurenai had never seen the girl so enthusiastic and skillful in a fight. Naruto was shocked at how easy he was defeated, and Hinata was scared that the blonde would hate her now, because she had humiliated him in front of their comrades. The downed genin started to sit up and looked at the Hyuga girl with amazement in his eyes. "That was awesome, Hinata!" He shouted elated and gave her a thumbs up. At his sudden compliment, the brunette blushed a deep shade of red and fainted with an eep, a small smile adorning her face. Naruto started to panic. I swear I didn't do anything this time. I didn't even touch her. Shino, help me, come on. The Abirame meanwhile moved over to Hinata. Even though he knew why she blacked out, he still wanted to check on her condition. Kurenai could only grin at the interaction between her team. She was sure the blonde was a gain for them after all. Hinata was never this open before, and even Shino seemed more lively. The Jonin was keen to find out how the blonde enigma would change them all. For better or worse, the first week of the new teammate had passed without any major incidents, if you don't count the occasional fainting spells of one Hinata Hyuga. The three genin and their Jonin sensei had met each day around 8 o'clock a.m. in Training Ground 42 and stayed there for their exercises till about 2 o'clock p.m. After a half-hour lunch break, they usually completed 1 or 2 D-rank missions, before calling it a day. Today Kurenai had dismissed her team after the usual routine and told them that tomorrow they would have their day off, to do whatever each of them wanted to do. Konoha's ninja worked normally 6 days a week with the 7th day per week off to relax. This system was created by Tobarama Senju, the Nidaime Hokage, more than 50 years ago. The schedule had proven its worth. The rate of overworked ninjas had severely decreased since it was installed. The days off were assigned to each person or team by a special office that coordinated everything, so that at each day more than 80% of the shinobi were available. Under special conditions, like in wartime, the system could be suspended to gain the maximum available manpower. Currently Kurenai Yohi was standing in the office of the Sandaime Hokage, waiting to give her leader the requested report on the newest addition to Team 8. The aged man rose his voice. You can start with your assessment on Uzumaki Naruto, whenever you are ready, Kurenai. First of, the most important part of my analysis. For now there are no heavy indicators that he is a spy or sleeper agent of any foreign power. Although I will continue my surveillance for a while to be sure of my first impression. 5 days aren't enough to come to a final conclusion. Some of his behavior patterns seem to have changed over his extended absence. If you are ready, Hokage-sama, I would now go into a more detailed report on my findings. The black-haired Jonin stopped at this point, letting the information sink in. Sarutobi gave her a small nod, indicating she could continue with her review. The current file on Naruto isn't really accurate anymore, Hokage-sama. He is still hyperactive, although less than expected, easy excitable and a happy nature, but beneath that the boy appears to be more mature and smarter than his records would indicate. For example, on our first team meeting, Naruto insisted on telling his new comrades about his burden, claiming that they would sooner or later experience him using the demon's chakra, and if they didn't know about it, it could be an obstacle in battle. Hinata and Shino took the news fairly well, realizing that even though the boy has the QB sealed in him, he is nothing more than a human being with a heavy burden. Kurenai had given the Hokage a small pause to think over the said before resuming her explanation. Naruto's lively nature loosened up both of his comrades over the last few days. Hinata was always shy and has a problem with her confidence. Shino, on the other hand, is mostly silent and observant, like all Abirame. The changes in them are currently small, but after spending more than 3 months with both, I could still notice them. The boy always had the talent to brighten up people, if only more would allow it, the aged leader said in a sad tone. Sarutobi took a puff on his smoking pipe. Do you think they will be ready for the Chunin exam next month? My son and Kakashi already told me they plan to enter their teams. There are only 4 weeks left, Hokage-sama. I will only support their participation if I know they are certainly ready. When they can complete a minimum of 3 C-rank mission to my satisfaction and all of them have overcome the experience of their first kill, then I will likely enter them. The Jonin answered the question with a stern expression. Your reasoning is understandable. Those exams are quite deadly, and we don't want to lose any hopeful genin. Team 7 and 10 have more field experience than your 3 genin. Furthermore, Kakashi's team did really well since their recreation. Very likely that they are the best rookie team we have this year. The Sandaime was pleased with her review and considered if everything was discussed between him and the Jonin sensei. Anything else I should know, Kurenai? The black-haired woman wanted to tell the Hokage about Naruto's new living arrangement, but she had promised the boy she wouldn't tell anybody that the blonde currently lived in the woods surrounding Training Ground 42. Kurenai didn't like the fact that she had to use a little white lie on her superior. However, she had to uphold the bond of trust between teacher and student, or the blonde probably would forever distrust her. The female decided she could at least tell the Hokage about Naruto's new passion for explosions. There is one other thing that I think is worth to be mentioned. Naruto somehow was able to devise a way to detonate his shadow clones. A quite dangerous technique, even though it is still not fully mature. Also, he has taken an excessive liking to blow up things. Training Ground 42 has no green patches of grass anymore. The whole clearing consists of small craters, burnt grass or exposed earth. If this is not a problem, I would request that this training ground will be off limits for everyone besides my team, so we can contain Naruto's path of destruction on a single location. The Hokage pondered on the said before he nodded. Request approved. Please watch over him and control his new explosive vandalism, Kurenai. You're dismissed, if this was everything. With a small bow, the black-haired Jonin left the Hokage's office, leaving the old leader alone with his thoughts and the cursed stacks of paperwork. It was a good thing Training Ground 42 was located quite far away from Konoha. The sound of Naruto's explosions otherwise would have scared the villagers shitless. The blonde had spent his whole day off their training, starting with some chakra control exercises, then letting about 30 of his clones explode trying to refine his detonation technique, and after all that, he worked on one of the ideas he had concerning a new jutsu. The last few days with his new team were eye-opening for him. Team 8 was vastly different from what he was used to on Team 7. Both Sakura and Sasuke never really got completely comfortable around him, while his new team seemed to accept him easier. So he started comparing his old and his new team in his mind. Sasuke always was the broody avenger, never talking to anybody more than he had to, most days a frown etched onto his face. The Uchiha was comparable to Shino in some ways, but even though the Aburame didn't speak much, he never made Naruto feel like he was beneath him, the way Sasuke normally liked to do. And when Shino raised his voice, he was helpful and friendly. At least Naruto believed this. He couldn't really read any emotions from the bug user at all. Hinata and Sakura were as different as day and night. Naruto always had liked the pinkette. In retrospective, it was hard to fathom why sometimes. It wasn't like he didn't like her now, but if he thought about the way she treated him, a cold shiver ran down his spine. Hinata, on the other hand, well, she was weird, but in a good way. She didn't hit or insult him, she stuttered fairly strong and sometimes fainted if he got too near or because of other reasons he didn't quite understand, but she was a nice person, even if extremely shy. Probably, he had a chance that Shino and Hinata would become his friends. They were really nice after all and even had accepted him, despite being told about the QB sealed in him. The thought of someday calling his teammates friends brought a small smile on his face. His thoughts drifted towards another matter at hand. Over the course of the last days, Naruto had learned something interesting. He noticed it while having lunch with his team. The fact that he was having meals with his teammates and sensei every day was also something new for him, something he really enjoyed. Never once he was thrown out of any restaurant while with them. The service personnel at most places didn't like him, he could see that much, often giving him hateful stares, but he was still served without too many problems. After that experience, he tried out to enter shops and restaurants alone. The same business he wasn't allowed in, when he was still an academy student. It got him a similar result than what he had experienced with his team. He could now enter and use their services without too much troubles. The conclusion for him was that as genin he could use all services and establishments, although he would still receive the hateful glares and insults. For now Naruto settled with the solution of using the transformation jutsu whenever he was not with his team, because so he could escape their hostilities with ease. One would think the blonde would by now be accustomed to the treatment the majority of the village gave him, but after his return it was much harder to deal with. Mainly because during his travels outside of Konoha, he never once had to endure any hostilities. He was just a normal boy, something he missed dearly now. With this new knowledge in mind, Naruto considered his housing situation. As genin he should be able to get a flat or something similar somewhere in the city, but was that really what he wanted? If he lived in Konoha, he would have to endure all the mental and verbal abuse again. That was something he currently avoided quite well. He only entered Konoha with his team, or using transformed clones. For now he settled with the conclusion that he wasn't sure what to do and that he would have to reconsider the whole topic again some other day. He would continue living in the woods out here for a while before coming to a final decision. It wasn't so bad out here, he had a tent and his sleeping bag. Furthermore, his transformed clones could get him everything he needed and his team's training ground was right on the doorstep. At the end of his day off, Naruto, exhausted, fell into a deep slumber. Another reason it was good that the training grounds were far away from Konoha, because the blonde snored fairly loud, scaring away almost all wildlife in the forest nearby. The next day, Team 8 fell back into their normal training routine. Kurenai practiced breaking out of genjutsus with Naruto again, the usual hour a day. This was their daily schedule till the blonde was able to counter everything his sensei threw at him. During this hour, Shino and Hinata spared against each other. Then they would switch and their sensei would give another of her students a personal 1-hour session, until all 3 genin had had individual training. The other 3 hours were spent with group maneuvers, tactics, and some more team bonding. During the usual sparring matches, Naruto had learned that Hinata was the best of them with taijutsu. Normally she won against both of her teammates, if the fights didn't drag out too long. Otherwise Naruto could tire her out with his shadow clones and Shino would drain her chakra with his Kikaichu bugs. Against Naruto, although draining the chakra with his bugs proved to be a tedious process, giving Shino a disadvantages in his battles with the blonde. While the Aburame's taijutsu was slightly above Naruto's, the blonde had numbers on his side. The matches between those two were always balanced and drawn out, often ending in a tie. Team 8 had already completed their 3-hour sparring program and was ready to start the second part of their daily routine as Naruto rose his voice. "Hey Hinata, I have a question about your fighting style, if that's okay for you?" "Sure, Nar Yudoke-kun, what is it?" The shy heiress answered timidly. The blonde made a concentrated face before he asked again. Is there some special reason why you usually don't use any ranged weapons? With your Byakugan's abilities, I thought you would be really good with throwing weapons and such stuff. Hinata's face flushed a bit at the words of praise she and her bloodline received from the blonde boy. My clan is specialized in melee fighting, also my own skills with kunai and shuriken aren't that good. She replied a bit embarrassed, while fidgeting with her fingers. Naruto gave her an encouraging smile, which only increased Hinata's uneasiness. Even when your family are masters of martial arts, you shouldn't limit yourself to only one way of fighting. The Jinchuriki got into a thinking pose for a few seconds, remembering a certain encounter he had in Wave Country. Then he started to speak again. Ever tried Senbon? You know, those pesky needles can be really dangerous. To Bayo, Kurenai had observed the discussion between her students. Naruto's idea had some good points, so it wouldn't hurt to test out if the girl could use Senbon needles to her advantage. He could be right, Hinata. This is something you should try out. The black-haired Jonin pulled out about 10 needles from one of her pouches and handed them to the Hyuga. Watch me carefully, I will show you how to use them. After roughly 5 minutes of instruction, Hinata was ready to give the Senbon a try. She activated her bloodline and focused her eyes on a tree about 20 meters away from her current location. Using the throwing technique her sensei had showed her, she launched the needle at the target. The Senbon hit spot on the middle of the tree trunk and sunk in about half a centimeter. Throw after throw, the blue net shot out the small metal spikes at her target. Not one missed, and in the end all 10 of them were embedded in the surrounding of the first, none farther away than 15 centimeters. That was awesome! An exuberant Naruto shouted through the clearing. I knew you could do it. A part of Naruto wanted to give the girl an encouraging pat on the shoulder, but he remembered her shyness problem and refrained from doing it. Excellent display of your abilities, Hinata. Praised the ever-stoic Aburame. You could almost see a small smile on his face. You seem to be a natural. That was very good, especially for a beginner. Congratulated Kurenai, her student. Hearing all those compliments from her team really embarrassed the Hyuga girl. Her face was quite flushed. Still, this would forever mark the day when Hinata Hyuga discovered her passion for throwing small metal needles at her enemies. It was also the day her comrades came to curse after having to play the target for her studies. The second week progressed much the same for Team 8 as the first. The only real change was Hinata's new training schedule with her pointy metal spikes. The girl spent most of her personal training sessions with Kurenai on throwing Senbon, and currently carried about 200 of them around with her. All of the usual routine should change in the third week, although. Punctual 8 o'clock a.m. their sensei walked into training ground 42, a mission file in her hands. You have already acquired us a mission for today, Kurenai-sensei? Shino was the first one to ask with a hint of curiosity in his otherwise quite monotonous voice. The black-haired Jonin gave every genin a sheet of paper, containing a small briefing on their assignment. After all our training and the tedious chores you had to till now, I am sure you three will be able to handle this assignment without problems. Naruto, Hinata and even Shino seemed to be excited about this news. The Hyuga and the Aburame had only done one simply C rank, an escort mission, before Kiba was moved to Team 7. Both were more than happy to finally do something else, after 3 months of only D ranks. The blonde Jinchuriki couldn't hide his enthusiasm. He hadn't complained about the chores his team had to do, but that didn't mean he liked them. Kurenai started to speak again. In the surroundings of Tanzaku, a notorious gambling city in the Land of Fire, an increase in robberies during the last month was reported. We are to investigate these activities and if possible stop the criminals behind them. Pack for roughly 2 weeks. Meet me at the main gates in 2 hours. And with that, Team 8 sensei vanished in a cloud of smoke, leaving only floating leaves behind. Not even 2 hours later, Team 8 was on their way to their first C-rank mission. Hopefully ready for the challenges ahead of them. Kurenai and her team reached Tanzaku after 3 days of uneventful travel. While their sensei spoke to the authorities, she had instructed the 3 genin to gather information from the locals. The genin had split up to gain as much information as possible in the short time. An hour later, Team 8 was reassembled. Did you find out anything helpful? Asked the black-haired woman, the young ninjas standing in front of her. Not much, sensei. Only got some vague rumors, saying that the culprits hide in the woodlands to the south. Replied Naruto, a bit of embarrassment swinging in his voice, because he couldn't get better information in the short time. The last attack occurred 2 days ago, on the road that leads towards the Land of Rivers. 4 travelers were robbed and killed. Was the Aburame's answer. IT talked to a pair of H-Hunters sensei. They saw a GR group of at least 7 men lurking through the woods. Kurenai gave her team a kind smile. You 3 did well. It will be the best if we start with the latest crime scene. It didn't take them too long to reach the spot where the last attack had occurred. The road in front of them was stained with several dark red and black spots. Furthermore, the ground had various scratches and other marks which indicated that some kind of fight occurred here. A foul smell of dead lingered over the whole place. The young Hyuga had turned almost white after seeing this location. Together with the strong smell, it took her quite some control to keep all her food inside. You can stay back, if you want, Hinata. No need to see all of this. Kurenai comforted her. The Jonin knew that the girl had to get comfortable with such sights sooner or later, but for now she could try to go easy on her. Meanwhile, Naruto was examining the dried pools of blood. There were 4 of them, 1 for each victim. By the size of it, each of them had at least lost 3 liters blood. Whoever did this enjoyed his work far too much. Even common thieves could kill quicker with less bloodshed. Those robbers had to be really sickening individuals. Sensei, I think I found a trail. Why, you ask? Because my Kikaichu have detected a faint trace of blood leading to the south. Shino seemed to be an epitome of calmness. If the blood and smell did disturb him, he didn't show it. Good, we move on in diamond formation. Shino, you lead. Hinata, you take the right side. Naruto the left. I am at the back. Hinata, activate your Byakugan periodically to survey the surroundings and look out for possible dangers. Kurenai gave them a hand signal and all 3 genin started to move forward, following Shino's lead. The team had moved for several hours through dense forest area, following the blood trail. Suddenly Hinata raised her hand. Everybody stopped. A small camp, about 100 meters in our current direction. 7 men, no ninja. She whispered, barely hearable. Hinata, Shino, give me cover with ranged attacks. I will attack with 10 to 15 clones and take them out. That should be the safest approach. What do you say, sensei? Naruto had taken charge and told his plan to the others. Kurenai thought about it for a few seconds before giving the blonde a nod. It was a simple but sound plan. The team started to move forward again, slowly approaching their targets. In a glade stood 5 tents surrounding a small fireplace. The bandits were sitting around drinking and joking, unsuspecting of the coming attack. The members of Team 8 meanwhile had positioned themselves north of the camp. Hinata and Shino had climbed a tree and waited for Naruto's signal to attack. The Jinchuriki meanwhile waited hidden behind a tree for the right moment to strike. Finally their sensei observed them all from a tree branch, veiled by genjutsu. The whiskered genin gave a wink with his hand and the hail of iron began immediately. Hinata started throwing saban and Shino's shuriken ripped through the air. At the same time 12 blonde copies appeared in the glade. As the first throwing weapons hit their targets, the bandit camp sprung into action. Shouts could be heard and the men tried to take cover behind their leather tents. One of them collapsed paralyzed before he could hide himself. More than 20 needles were sticking out from various places on his torso and limbs. All of Naruto's clones now rushed towards the camp. His teammates stopped their attack to not accidentally hit the blonde copies. Soon the remaining 6 thugs were surrounded by the 12 clones. Give up and I don't have to kill you bastards, Databayo. One of the blondes said with an ice-cold voice. The leader of the band swung a big one-handed, bloody axe at said copy, who easily dodged the attack. Shut up, brat. First we will skin you and then the rest of your team. I hope you all bled well. The dirty thug shouted at the identical-looking genins. You know what to do, yelled the original. As soon as those words were spoken, all clones formed a ram sign and started to concentrate their chakra. The bandits didn't wait a moment and began their counterattack, but it was already too late for them. 3 clones were destroyed before the explosion started. 5 detonations rocked the clearing. The blast wave blew a big cloud of dirt through the clearing. After the dust had settled, Team 8 could see the gruesome sight before them. Blood and body parts were strewn around. Not one body was intact. Torn of limbs and shattered heads littered the ground. A smell of burning flesh was hard in the nose. Some fleshy parts had even hit the trees surrounding the glade. As soon as she saw the massacre, Hinata stormed away, her face ashen, tears running down her face. The Hyuga girl surely was going to vomit out everything she had eaten today. Kurenai was shocked. She hadn't expected the blonde to be so brutal. There would have been other ways to subdue the enemy without relying on tearing them apart. It was certainly effective, but overly cruel. She had seen many things in the Third Shinobi World War, and certainly the clearing reminded her of those times, when war raged through the elemental nations. After those thoughts, the black-haired Jonin followed her fleeing student, trying to comfort the distraught girl. Shino meanwhile could only stare in wonder at his blonde teammate. Without blinking an eye, he had killed 7 men in one of the most gruesome ways possible, and he didn't seem to be affected by it at all. Even the ever-stoic Aburame was disgusted by the sight before him. Naruto in the meantime was walking across the clearing, making his way to the crater his copies had created. He looked through what was left of his adversaries and their camp, trying to gauge if there was anything of value or importance left. After finding nothing, he returned to Shino's side. None of them spoke a single word till their sensei returned. Hinata? Shouted a concerned Kurenai. She had lost the sight of her female charge. Soon she found the girl leaning on a tree, puking her innards out. The Jonin put her hand comforting on the Hyuga's shoulder in a simple attempt to comfort the heiress. After a few minutes, Hinata was finished with emptying her bowels. Tears were still streaming down her face. HEKK killed them, she stammered out. HESL slaughtered them. And Naruto slaughtered them all, shouted the Kunoichi in anguish. Kurenai embraced the girl. It was the only thing she could do now. This sight was nothing a rookie genin should see. Hinata had returned the embrace and was now crying her eyes out, while holding on to her sensei. After standing locked in each other's arms for a while, the girl finally had loosened her grip, letting go of Kurenai. The Hyuga had stopped crying but now looked like a mess. Wait here, Hinata, I will get the others. It's better if you don't have to see that again. I will be back soon. With that, Kurenai left the heiress alone. After vomiting and crying, Hinata was deep in thought. In fact, she hadn't even recognized that her sensei had left. This was her Naruto-kun. What had happened to him? She was happy since he had returned. They were on the same team, something she had only dreamed of. She saw him almost every day now. Yes, he was a bit different, although that was to be expected after being so long away. But now the blonde boy scared her. How could the nice guy she admired be so cold-hearted and brutal in combat? A few minutes later, Kurenai, Shino and Naruto returned. The black-haired Jonin had found them standing near the glade. None had spoken a word. She could see that even Shino was shocked. At the same time, Naruto looked kind of relaxed, like this whole ordeal was nothing for him. Kurenai had used a Katon jutsu to incinerate the remains and then guided her two genin back to Hinata. The brunette couldn't look at her blonde crush as he came into view. Naruto could see the fear in her eyes as she turned away. It was the kind of reaction he had anticipated. But he couldn't delay this event. That was the way he was now. Either they would accept him or hate him for it. What did you do out there, Naruto? That wasn't necessary. Kurenai finally broke the silence between them. That's the way I'm fighting. Did you three think the explosions were for show? The blonde shot back. Nobody of us got hurt. The mission is a full success. Well, I'm sorry that you had to see this massacre I made. But if I shall remain a part of this team, you must get accustomed to my way of fighting. Explosions are messy. Still, there was no need for your actions. We could have taken them down without ripping them apart. Kurenai could see why her young charge did what he did. That, although, didn't mean she couldn't approve of it. In the end, it was uncalled for. Naruto gave his sensei an angry glare. You read the report about the Wave Country mission, I assume? The blonde didn't wait for his sensei's answer before he continued. A so-called harmless mission got us nearly killed. I thought Sasuke was dead back then. There is no guarantee for anything. Naruto took a deep breath. I will do everything necessary to protect my comrades, those who are important to me. Because that is my Nindo, Tebeo. The blonde turned around and started walking in slow pace towards Tanzaku. Hinata, Shino and even Kurenai could only stare at Naruto. He butchered their enemies, to ensure their safety. His sensei didn't know how to reply to that. Seeing his teammate nearly die on his first C-rank mission and then traveling the world alone, must have been a hard experience for somebody that young. It seemed that now he would do everything possible to ensure that nothing like that ever happened again. Soon the rest of Team 8 followed their blonde-haired teammate. Nothing was spoken. All of them were deep in thought about the events that had transpired in the forest. Dusk was already falling, as Team 8 finally reached the outskirts of Tanzaku. Nobody had spoken a word on the whole track, back to the town. After Naruto's outburst, everybody else on his team was absorbed in their own thoughts, and the blonde himself wasn't in the mood for any conversations. His face was contorted to a constant frown, and the normally shining blue eyes looked dull. Kurenai had decided that it was already too late for them to start their homeward journey towards Konoha, so they needed to look for a place to stay for the night. It didn't take them long to find a nice hotel for an overnight stay. The three young ninja waited in the lobby, while their sensei finished the necessary arrangements. As soon as the Jonin had handed each genin a room key, Naruto started walking away from their lodging. Where you think you are going, Naruto? Asked his concerned sensei with a stern voice, blowing off some steam. The blonde's voice was cold, but filled with hidden anger. His comrades could only stare at his retreating back as he slowly vanished from their sight. 10 minutes later, the remains of Team 8 were assembled in their sensei's hotel room. Kurenai had offered them a chance to talk about what had happened in the woods, an offer that Shino and Hinata gladly accepted. And so the Jonin and her two genin were sitting in the room. Nobody was sure how to start the conversation. Following 5 minutes of awkward silence, Hinata finally asked the first question. Sensei, why did Naruto-kun think it was necessary to kill them all? The Hyuga girl had thought about the blonde's words, although she couldn't fully understand why he thought it was the best to slaughter their adversaries to protect his team from harm. This is the main question here, Hinata, as our enemies were never a real threat to us. Also, I would like to know what happened on Naruto-san's mission to Wave Country. What sparks my interest in those events? Currently it seems that his experiences there are part of his reason for acting like he did. Agreed Shino. The black-haired Jonin took a deep breath. While their journey back to the city, she had mused how she could explain Naruto's actions to her other two charges, despite she herself didn't fully understand him. The only thing I can tell you about the mission to Wave is what you already heard. Naruto thought that Sasuke was killed by their enemy. He probably blames himself for what happened. If you want to know more, you will have to ask him. It is not my place to speak more about those events. Shino and Hinata were disappointed. They thought they could learn more about the blonde's motivations. Is there anything you can tell us, sensei? Naruto cares about us, I know that much. You heard his Nindo. He is willing to do everything to protect the people important to him, which seems to include us three. Kurenai made a small pause before continuing. I hope you two still can work together with him, even after seeing him do something so gruesome. Their sensei said in a serious tone. The young genin were shocked by this sudden question. They had heard what Naruto said, about remaining on their team. But never had they thought that Kurenai would consider his proposal about leaving them. Sensei, Naruto-san is still our teammate. Even if Hinata and I are troubled by his brutal display, this is no reason to suspend him. Why, you may think? Because we should be able to sort out this problem between us in time. Shino spoke with full conviction. SS Shino is right, Kurenai-sensei. Please don't remove Naruto-kun from our team. Hinata couldn't say she wasn't affected by how their teammate had acted, but she still didn't want him to leave their team. Deep down the Hyuga girl knew, the blonde was not a bad person, that was the unwavering truth she believed in. He must have some good reasons to act like he did. Now she only had to find out why. The black-haired Jonin gave them a reassuring smile. Both of you are really mature already. I needed to know if you still can work together. For now Naruto will stay with us. You two should go to bed. Meanwhile I will look for our favorite blonde troublemaker. About 20 minutes later Kurenai was standing in a wooden area on the edge of Tanzaku. It wasn't too hard to find Naruto. His strong chakra signature wasn't easy to overlook, even for somebody who wasn't a sensor type. What she found wasn't what she had expected. She had thought the blonde would literally blow off his anger through some explosions, wrecking chaos somewhere. What the Jonin found although was him sitting in the grass, eyes closed, seemingly meditating. Wondered when you would come looking for me. The blonde spoke in a monotonous voice, as he raised himself from the floor. He looked calm and collected, quite different from when he had left them behind. The Jonin could now see that in one of his hands the boy had about 10 stone marbles of different size. What were you doing out here, Naruto? The Jinchuriki slipped the stones into one of his belt pouches and then zipped up his robe. Some chakra control exercise I learned while traveling. Really relaxing. So you are here to tell me that you kicked me from your team because of my dangerous behavior? Kurenai sighed loud. I'm not happy about your actions, but you were right on some accounts. Nobody got hurt and you completed the mission. Furthermore, I had a talk with Shino and Hinata, both still want you on the team. But you should explain yourself sooner or later, they want some answers, the same goes for me. One more thing, you won't be using your explosions without my approval on missions, understood? Naruto was prepared for the worst turn of events. This was much better than he expected though. I understand. The blonde took a long breath. Please give me a few days, speaking about my motivations is hard for me. You have 1 week, then I want a good explanation. There was still something else on Kurenai's mind, that she wanted to ask the blonde. Those bandits weren't your first kills. You were much too unaffected by their demise. You are right, sensei. My first kill probably was in the battle on the bridge. Not that I remember anything about that, it was too hectic. The first one I can recall was about 1 month later. Some bounty hunters ambushed me, must have thought I was a missing nin. It wasn't the complete truth but quite near. Flashback. Naruto and Deidara had almost crossed the land of frost. The landscape had slowly changed from vast tundra to a dense coniferous forest. Another 2 days and the blondes would enter the land of hot water. With a low voice the bomber spoke. We are being followed. Be ready for battle, Naruto. The young genin's reply was only a small hand gesture, meaning he understood the situation. Deidara slipped his hands casually in the pockets of his auburn robe. The tongues of his mouth started devouring some of his special clay. Before the missing nin could bring his hands back out to attack, although a shout pierced the silence. Let your hands where they are, don't want to get caught in one of your explosions, Deidara of IWA. A gruff voice shouted from behind the two blondes. Naruto and his mentor turned around in an instant. The genin instinctively slipped into his taijutsu stance, looking slightly tensed about the events transpiring. Deidara meanwhile was quite relaxed, both his hands still in his pockets. Before the two stood a bunch of dirty, unkempt men, roughly 15 of them, looking like common bandits or waylayers. We don't have anything of value, so just go away, to bail. The blonde Jinchuriki shouted at them. One of the men, with black hair and a ruffled beard, started laughing. Oh, kid, we are not robbers, we are here for the big fish. He pointed towards Deidara. Today is just our lucky day. IWA pays 20 million real for this bastard. I doubt we can get any bounty for you, buddy, but probably somebody would buy you as slave, you never know that. The leader laughed harder at the end of his speech. What gives you the impression you can win against us, son? The former IWA ninja pulled his hands out from his pockets and thrusted the palms forward, towards their adversaries. The hand mouths opened and hundreds of small flying insects were spewed out. The swarm of clay creatures, that vaguely resembled oversized flies, was hovering between the group of bounty hunters and the two blondes. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Naruto produced 5 solid clones, which immediately took a defense position before him and his mentor. The copies were facing their enemies, a kunai in each hand. Don't want to reconsider your plans, asked a grinning Deidara. The gang of bounty hunters wasn't intimidated in the slightest about the displays of both ninjas. Get them! The bearded man shouted. As soon as the words had left his mouth, 3 grenades were thrown and smoke enveloped the battle scene. Both blondes started coughing as the smoke enveloped them. The gray haze burned in the eyes and the lungs and it was hard to breathe. Deidara grabbed his little apprentice and tried to get out of the smoke cloud. He could feel that whatever this gas was, it had a bad effect on him. Every second that passed, he felt weaker and more vulnerable. Finally the missing nin broke free from the cloud of gas. He stumbled and collapsed on the ground, dropping Naruto unceremoniously on the hard forest soil. "Hey sensei, what was that for?" Naruto asked, slightly agitated. But he got no response. The blonde bomber was having a heavy coughing fit. The young genin was worried about his mentor. The fume had hindered him to breathe freely, but it seemed to affect Deidara much more than it had him. The feeling that his clones were destroyed snapped Naruto out of his musings. He had to get battle ready to defend his sensei. "You are still ready to fight, brat?" spoke the bearded guy as he stepped out of the cloud of smoke, closely followed by his men. "What did you do to him?" Naruto snarled back. "The gas, you mean? It disrupts one's chakra for a few minutes, quite effective on higher-level ninjas. Strange that it didn't work on you, probably you are just too weak." With one quick hand gesture from him, his men started moving forward, towards the two blondes. Anger was rising inside of Naruto. Those bastards wanted to harm Deidara and the only one who could stop them was he. The boy's eyes flashed between a dark red and his usual blue a few times, before settling on a darker shade of blue than what they normally had. Naruto formed a cross-hand sign and yelled multiple shadow clone jutsu. 40 copies of the blonde genin flashed into existence. 2 swiftly grabbed the downed Deidara and run away, while the rest glared at the attackers. Naruto followed his 2 clones carrying his mentor. This time he wasn't going to take any risks. His clones knew what to do. There would be no mercy for hurting one of his important persons. The group of copies surrounded the bounty hunters and everyone formed a ram hand sign, then they closed their eyes. A second later a loud rumble pierced the forest, and the ground shook slightly. Naruto knew what had happened. He had experienced it from 38 perspectives. Mercilessly he had blown up those bastards, torn them to tiny pieces of blood and flesh. The thought alone made him sick. 15 minutes later Deidara was all up again. "What happened?" was his first question. I killed them all." Naruto's voice sounded like he was in despair, and he stammered slightly. "Your first time, I presume?" Gaining a small nod from the boy, the bomber continued speaking. "Won't sugarcoat it for you. We are shinobi, we kill. Simple as that, and often it's them or you. Doubt you want to die already? And not always the people you kill are the bad guys. Sometimes you are the bad guy or nobody is it. If you can't take those facts, you should quit being a ninja. Those are the hard truths of the shinobi life." With those words of advice Deidara left Naruto alone, to ponder his thoughts. For the 5 days Naruto was plagued by nightmares, although in the end he knew Deidara was right. Either he learned to deal with the guilt, or he had to quit being a ninja, something that was his dream for a very long time. Flashback Kai. "It's not like I enjoy killing, but I have come to terms with it. We are shinobi and shinobi are killers. That is something all of us have to accept. It's as simple as that," Naruto said reflectively. "How much blood do you have on your hands already, Naruto?" The Jonin needed to know that, because the blonde spoke so casually about killing. After all she had witnessed this day, the Jinchuriki must have taken quite some lives already. "Far too much," was Naruto's reply. His sensei could hear the deep sadness in the boy's voice. "If this was everything, Kurenai-sensei, I am going to sleep now." As Naruto was walking towards their hotel, the female Jonin thought about the blonde boy's words. The view he had on the shinobi life was nothing she had expected from a rookie genin. Normally only seasoned chunin or jonin spoke like that. It was much truth in his words although. The next day, quite early in the morning, Team 8 were back on their way home, moving fast towards Konoha. The tension that was present yesterday could still be felt in the air, but to a much lesser degree. Seemingly everybody had calmed down somewhat over the night. 2 uneventful days of traveling later, by nightfall, they had reached the village hidden in the leaves. It was the day after their return from the first C rank of Team 8. Tomorrow would be their day off, so today marked the end of the week for them. Kurenai had brought her mission report to the Hokage Tower this morning, before heading towards Training Ground 42. She had planned nothing special for today, a normal 6-hour training session and 1 D rank afterwards. The team needed some calm routine after the events that had transpired. Another hour of breaking out of genjutsus had just ended for Naruto. Slowly he was getting a hang of it. The most basic illusions were no more problem for him, but as soon as he was trapped in something more serious, he was literally lost. Kurenai was sure she would correct that. After all, she was the genjutsu mistress of Konoha. Even if Naruto couldn't use her prized art, he would be able to break out from almost everything. She would made sure of this. A black-clad ninja materialized out of nowhere in the clearing and broke all 4 ninja from their current activity. "Uzumaki Naruto, Hokage-sama has requested your presence, immediately." After he had spoken those words, the shinobi vanished as fast as he had appeared. Naruto grumbled. "The old man probably read your report, sensei." Then he started walking towards Konoha. To meet his demise, his team followed him suit. 20 minutes later, the blonde genin entered the Hokage's office, while Kurenai, Hinata and Shino had to wait outside. "Good day, Hokage-sama. Already read of my newest accomplishments?" It was a bitter joke on Naruto's side. It was bad enough for him to find the right words, to tell his team why he did what he did. But now he had to justify to the village leader why he had mercilessly slaughtered those bandits. "This is a serious matter. You killed 7 men in cold blood. This isn't like you, Naruto." The Sandame answered, A frown etched on his face, his smoking pipe in the left hand and the other hand clenched into a fist. The blonde chuckled darkly. You don't know me, old man, not anymore. Naruto sighed. This wasn't a talk he wanted to have. The wave mission and more than 2 months on the road changed me. Harden me if you want call it that. I will do what is necessary to protect my teammates. Nobody will hurt them. The boy's ice-cold gaze met the Hokage's eyes to support his statement. I understand. Sarutobi would have liked to know more about this, but he wouldn't get any answers from the boy. Ever since he came back, Naruto had a good amount of distrust for the Hokage. The old man had hidden his Uzumaki heritage from him. There is still another matter at hand. I found out about your living arrangements. Care to explain? For Naruto, the day had gone from bad to worse in seconds. Who told you that? He snapped at the aged leader. Had Kurenai broken her promise and betrayed him? After the recent events, he couldn't be so sure anymore. A patrol of Chunin stumbled upon your camp about a week ago. I only got the report after you had left. So why are you living in the woods? The Hokage elaborated with some anger in his voice. My flat was already occupied by someone else when I came back. First I thought about getting a new one. But it's too hard for me to stay in the village, with the constant hate and prejudge I get. For now I live in the forest, it soothes me. And no, I don't need your help, Hokage-sama. I will deal with my problems alone. Naruto almost spat the last part out, then he turned around and exited the office, leaving a startled Hiruzen Sarutobi behind. Naruto's teammates and his sensei could see a deep scowl on the boy's face as he came out of the Hokage's office. Whatever he and their leader had discussed didn't improve the boy's mood in the slightest. The blonde stared at those three before him, impassive, tapping his foot on the floor. Can we get back to training? You could hear the annoyance as he spoke. After receiving a nod from his sensei, Naruto started walking towards their training ground. The rest of his squad followed shortly behind. As teammate exited the tower, they run directly into the waiting Sasuke, Sakura, and Kiba. In fact, Naruto almost crashed headfirst into the Uchiha boy. The blonde muttered a sorry, and wanted to continue his way, not really in the mood to talk to his ex-teammates, especially after having to deal with the Hokage. Whatever, Dobe, so you really survived. Fortune favors fools, after all. The dark-haired boy had a smirk on his lips as he said those words. The Jinchuriki turned around and glared at the Uchiha. Team, shove it! Then Naruto tried to walk away again, before he felt a jerk on his shoulder. You can't speak like that to Sasuke-kun. Almost screeched the pink-haired girl, who had grabbed the blonde. Sakura is right. Is that your way to greet your former teammates? Said the boy with the small white pup on his head. Before the irritated Naruto could even answer, Sasuke raised his voice again. Kiba, Sakura, I don't need your help to deal with the dough. It's not like a no-name, like him could lay a finger on me. By now the blonde genin was ready to explode. Today's events were not in his favor, that was for sure. Sasuke, would you like to see my newest jutsu firsthand? Naruto spoke all too sweetly, but his eyes showed the bubbling anger inside. The rest of Team 8 could only watch in amazement at the scene that unfolded before them. Was this how the old Team 7 had interacted with each other? Before the scene could get any more out of hand, Kurenai grabbed her blonde charge and left immediately. Shino and Hinata following fast behind. Sasuke, Sakura and Kiba could only stare at the retreating backs of Team 8. 5 seconds later Hatake Kakashi appeared in a swirl of leaves. Sorry I am late, but I run into this woman and did I miss something? Kurenai had dragged the fuming Naruto all the way to training ground 42, where she dropped him unceremoniously on the torn ground. Care to explain why you wanted to show Sasuke Uchiha your explosions? The Jonin asked in a calm, collected voice that didn't betray the wrath about his actions. Hey, he started it, always bad-mouthing me, Dadabayo. Naruto shouted his quick reply. That is still no reason to threaten his life. You know you can't fight other leaf ninja, even if they agitate you, was Kurenai's firm response. Naruto, you can always talk to us, we are your team. So what really troubles you? The blonde took a deep breath, to calm himself. With your ultimatum, the old man snooping around in my affairs and then Team's insults, I just lost control, sorry. Naruto answered in a soft, rueful voice, then he shrugged. Probably it's the best I just get over with the needed talk. If it's okay with you I will try to explain my actions on our last mission, sensei. Kurenai gave him an encouraging smile. It's good that you are ready to talk to us, start whenever you feel ready. Then you should sit down, this can take a while. Naruto spoke solemnly. The next half hour the blonde explained everything that had happened during his first C-rank mission. Starting with the ambush by the demon brothers, his vow to never back down again, the encounter with Zabuza, his first meeting with Haku in the woods and the final conclusion at the bridge, when Sasuke had seemingly scarified his life for him because he was too weak. How he had the first time used the power of the Kyuubi afterwards, to defeat the Hunter Nin, which was in fact a disguised Haku. The tragic life story of his enemy, and how Haku had rescued Zabuza from Kakashi-sensei's final attack. And at last, also why he had gone missing for 2 months. Then he stopped. Naruto's team was almost entranced by his tale. For his first mission outside of Konoha it was really a big, dangerous, even sad adventure. Still, I don't understand fully how this leads to your Nindo and why you think you have to exterminate all dangers that could affect your teammates. Was the question Kurenai asked after the whole, lengthy explanation. Naruto sighed, he had expected as much. You probably can't understand my motivations. Taking a deep breath, a sad, dull look in his eyes, he continued. I never had any friends or family. There are probably around 5 people who have my full trust. Sasuke and I weren't really close, but he probably could have become my first friend. Seeing him die, because I was unable to do something arg. A lone tear dripped down Naruto's face, he clenched his fists hard, drawing small drops of blood. It was horrible, knowing that it was my fault. As long as I am breathing, I will do everything to prevent something like that from ever happening again. Naruto shouted the last part out. That was the moment the rest of his team ultimately understood. The blonde had only a handful of bonds and he was willing to do everything necessary to protect those few people, which were even remotely close to him. And Naruto Keikun, if you want I will be your friend. Hinata spoke with strong conviction in her voice. She could relate to her crush on some level. She was also kind of lonely while growing up, but still she at least had a family, even if not the most caring. She couldn't really understand how it was to be totally alone in the world. Like Hinata, Shino could relate a bit to Naruto. Outside of his family, most people were disgusted by the Aburame, because of the insects living in their bodies. So he hadn't had any friends outside of his clan. Hinata is right, I would enjoy to be your friend Naruto, if that is desirable for you. Why, you may ask? Because you are my teammate and we should support each other in every way possible. Really? You both mean it? Naruto was astonished, he hadn't expected anything like that. After Hinata nodded shyly and Shino gave him a positive reply, Naruto embraced them both and shouted many times thank you. Through the clearing. That was until he saw that Hinata had fainted in his arms. By now he didn't go full panic mode after seeing her pass out. Kurenai could only smile. The rift in her team was dissolved and a strong bond of friendship was forming between those 3 genin. Probably they were meant for great things, after all you could never knew. Naruto was feeling great today. Yesterday was quite hard on him, but had turned out really good in the end. First he had his fallout with the Hokage. It wasn't like he actually hated the old man. The blonde had many good memories involving the aged leader, although after learning that the Hokage had known about his clan, it made him still quite angry that the old man had hidden that from him. Naruto was sure that his feeling would eventually recede currently, though he just wanted that Sarutobi didn't meddle with his affairs, simple as that. After the mess with the Hokage, the blonde had just had the luck to almost crash into the stuck-up Uchiha team. In his already agitated state, the Jinchuriki had to threaten the black-haired boy to give him a first-hand experience of his loved explosions during their short argument. Naruto didn't want to kill or even harm Sasuke, but his building-up rage needed some vent, and the Uchiha was just the one available for that. The blonde was glad that Kurenai-sensei had saved the situation, otherwise he would have done something that he now would regret. In the end, it was one of the most memorable days Naruto ever had. After hearing his lengthy explanation, both of his teammates were eager to assure him that they would be his friends, an offer the blonde happily accepted. Shino and Hinata, his first 2 friends, the thought alone gave him a good feeling. It wasn't like he had nobody. There were Deidara, Iruka, Tuchi, Iam, Konohamaru, and even the old man Hokage. Naruto was more or less close to all those people. Now, although he had friends in his own age group, that was a great improvement for him. Naruto was still a bit sore from yesterday. After their heartfelt declaration of friendship, the 3 genin of Team Kurenai had only done group training before their sensei dismissed them. Hinata had used him and Shino as pincushions, trying to master the throwing technique the black-haired Jonin had shown her. By the end of the day, the Hyuga girl was quite proficient in launching multiple saban with one flick of her hand. Today was teammate day off, so he could do whatever he wanted, which normally included training, and tons of ramen. The blonde had slept in longer than normal, and then he completed his usual morning rituals, and by now it was 9:30. Now he could do some more chakra control exercises, though another few hours trying to complete the first level of the Tower of Stone didn't sound so good. The blonde also had this new jutsu he wanted to finish, but that could wait for another day. There was something else on his mind, which needed his immediate attention. He still hadn't found that damned book about sealing. When he had finally returned to Konoha, 3 weeks ago, one of his transformed clones had asked the old librarian if the library had any books about the sealing arts. After a look on the inventory list, the man had assured him that there was indeed one book with the knowledge he sought, but he couldn't tell him where it was located. And none of Naruto's shadow clones was able to locate that thing till now. Finally, it was time to take the matter into his own hands. One may ask now why the library in Konoha had only one book about the sealing arts. The answer is really simple. Konoha has in fact 2 different libraries, the public one for everyone and the shinobi version for seasoned ninjas. The problem now was that the shinobi library could only be used by ninja of at least Chunin rank. Some of the more important sections required you even to be the rank of Jonin. Naturally, for now the blonde was stuck with the civilian version, At least this one had a book with the knowledge he needed. Naruto knew that he probably could get a book about sealing somewhere else. But the librarian had told him that this one was written by an extraordinary seal master, and now the blonde wanted to have exactly that book and not another one. So his decision for today was easy. He would spend most of his day off in the library, searching for this hidden gem. About 7 hours later, Naruto was cursing and fuming. By now he had turned around every book in that damned library, at least 2 times, if not even more often. He had used 5 transformed shadow clones to help him with the search, but it hadn't helped at all. If somebody had seen him and his copies, they must have thought that he did something suspicious. Searching multiple times through the library, turning around every book clearly didn't look normal. The Jinchuriki was leaning against one of the bookshelves in the back of the building. He thought that in this part of the library, that was less frequented, he probably would have a higher chance to find what he sought for. Repeatedly he slammed his clenched fist against the wooden shelf in anger, until something hit him hard on the head. Ouch! Naruto was rubbing his head and stared at the thing that had crashed onto his skull. Before him on the floor lay a rectangular black something. He wasn't so sure what it was. The boy's hand grabbed the thing and picked it up, so that he could have a better look at it. A thick layer of dust encased it, and Naruto used the sleeve of his robe to wipe away the grime. After that procedure he could see that it was a book. Well, what else should have fallen from a bookshelf? Then the blonde read the title, Sealing, The Underappreciated Art, Volume 1. That couldn't be right, could it? After reading the title for the 5th time, Naruto finally understood. Through sheer dumb luck he had found the gem he was seeking for. Yeah! His victory yell could be heard echoing through the whole building. Seconds later the old librarian stood before him, an angry glare on his face. This is a library. If you do that again, you will be thrown out. I found it. I finally found it, Databeo. Nothing could dampen the blonde's joyous mood now, not even an angry old man berating him. The boy had even forgotten that he was still transformed, and his declaration of Databeo surely sounded strange to everyone who heard it. You have found what? Asked the impatient caretaker. Naruto shoved the book nearly into his face. The book about sealing. Can I lend it out? The librarian took the small black, battered book from the boy's hands. After looking at it for a few seconds and reading the first page, he gave it back. You want to lend out that? He received an eager nod from the young genin, then he continued to speak. Take it, you're the first one that wanted to have it, since we have it here. It's yours now. Naruto would have done a dance of joy, but he was sure the librarian would chuck him out on his ear if he did another loud expression of joy. 15 minutes later the blonde stood before his favorite ramen stand. After all, finding the book needed to be celebrated, and the old geezer even gave it to him for free. His stomach growled. He hadn't eaten since breakfast, and now it was almost time for dinner, so he entered the stand. Double my usual, Tsuchi. Naruto almost shouted as he took a seat. The ramen chef eyed the newcomer carefully. And you are? I'm Naruto, Tabeo. Who else? Was the immediate annoyed reply. That's not even funny. Looked in the mirror recently, boy? A confused Tsuchi answered. After taking a look on himself, the blonde finally understood. He was still transformed into some random nobody. A cloud of smoke later, the stranger was replaced by a blonde boy in his usual auburn robe. As soon as the chef saw his favorite customer, he said, For miso ramen, coming up. Soon the blonde was eating his precious ramen. Probably devouring would have been the more appropriate description of his table manners, or the lack of them. Another customer entered and seated himself beside the Jinchuriki. 1 bowl of pork, please, said the voice of the newcomer, but the blonde was currently too engrossed into his food to even notice him. When Naruto was finished with his bowls of ramen, he put some money on the counter and wanted to leave, but as his eyes gazed over the other guests besides him, he instantly recognized the man. Hey, Kakashi-sensei, long time no see. The one-eyed Jonin turned his head and stared at the speaker. A few seconds later he finally spoke. Naruto, should have suspected you are here too. Although I didn't recognize you without your usual omnipresent orange. He patted the blonde on his back. His eyes did their eye smile thing and gleamed at the boy. I'm glad you're alive. Was really worried about you. We all thought you died back there. I'm sorry, I wasn't there to save you. Spoke Kakashi regretfully. Not your fault, sensei. Was too reckless back then. The old man told you about my little journey? The Jonin gave him a knowing nod. Sorry for what happened yesterday. Didn't want to go so over the top. What do you mean, Naruto? Did something happen? Was the confused reply the boy got. My team meet your team as we left the Hokage Tower, and I got into an argument with Sasuke. Nearly got out of hand if it weren't for Kurenai-sensei. Said the Jinchuriki with remorse. Kakashi only laughed. Now he finally understood the strange situation he had experienced yesterday. Hey, I know how you two are, always teasing each other, and you always had a bit of a short temper. Some things never change. A short pause later the Jonin spoke seriously. You know, if you need something you can always come to me. I will always be your sensei. Thank you, Kakashi-sensei, I will remember that. The blonde smiled at the Jonin. Sorry, but I have to go, still things to do and places to be, you know. After waving goodbye to Tsuchi and Kakashi, Naruto left the ramen stand. The next day, Shino, Hinata and Naruto were waiting in the clearing of Training Ground 42, while Kurenai-sensei was already more than 25 minutes late. Hope Kurenai-sensei didn't catch the chronic lateness disease from Kakashi-sensei. That would be so troublesome. The blonde genin joked, while somewhere else in Konoha a certain lazy Nara had to sneeze hard. Do you really believe that, Naruto? Because I think that such an illness doesn't exist. Spoke the young Aburame in his usual stoic way. Geez, that was a joke, Shino. You need to loosen up, man. Naruto shook his head at the bug user's reply. Suddenly a large explosion of smoke occurred before the three genin. A purple-haired woman stepped out of the white haze and grinned at the teammate. Enko Midarashi, Special Jonin and Interrogation Specialist, your new surrogate sensei for today, and you three brats are Kurenai-chan's team? She spoke with an intimidating, loud voice, while she eyed all three ninjas before her carefully. You're late. Where the hell is our real sensei, and what is a Special Jonin? You don't look so special, lady, you know. Shouted Naruto back at the new arrival. You're the Uzumaki loudmouth I heard about, aren't you? I'm not impressed, I must say. Enko huffed, then spoke up again with some annoyance. Kurenai is at the academy. They needed a real Jonin showing of or something. Told them I could do that, but no, I wouldn't be good influence on the children. The Special Jonin muttered the last part barely audible. All three youngsters stared wide-eyed at their temporary sensei. Naruto with some barely hidden anger. She had mocked him after all. This strange person was really their teacher for today? This wouldn't end well for them. Sensei, what are we doing today then? Asked a slightly scared Hinata. First some survival training, later on I have a special mission for you three. The purple-haired woman smiled, but it was more like a dangerous, sadistic smirk. Naruto groaned. Really, survival exercises? That sucks, Tebeo. Enko laughed. Yes, it will suck, at least for you three. For me? This will be quite entertaining. She bit her thumb and drew some blood, then slammed her hand onto the ground. Summoning jutsu. A 10-meter-long brown snake appeared in a cloud of white smoke. The Special Jonin still had the same smirk on her lips as she spoke again. Now try to survive that, brats. As those words left her mouth, the snake rushed forward. The three genin immediately dispersed, splitting up and moving in three different directions to distract the serpent. Not that it helped, the snake was hot on the heels of Naruto, ignoring the other two targets. The brown reptile lunged after the blonde boy, only to miss him by a few centimeters. Naruto believed he had felt the hot breath of the beast in his neck. Hinata, Shino, I could use some help here. Please, shouted the distraught genin. Don't leave the training ground, by the way. Or you get another hour with my little scaly friend. Shouted a giggling Enko through the clearing. The Hyuga girl stopped her retreat as soon as she heard her crush's plea. Then she took out a bunch of saban from one of her pouches and started pelting the serpent with those spiky needles. To her dismay, though, the metal spikes couldn't penetrate the scales of the reptile, bounced off harmlessly, and then dropped onto the soil. Shino meanwhile had also halted his escape to help Naruto. The bug user directed a swarm of his Kikaichi bugs to attack the head of the creature, the most vulnerable target available. As soon as the insects started to assault the eyes of the snake, the beast stopped following Naruto and started to trash in its current place instead. The blonde, saved from his precarious situation, was now ready for the counterattack. Multiple Shadow Clone Jutsu 13 Narutos popped into existence, all grinning like madman. Surround the scaled bastard. Let us make some snake sushi. The original shouted, but before any of the clones could even move forward, they all were destroyed by a rain of shuriken. Not so fast, Blondie. Who said you can attack and harm my little pet? The purple-haired Special Jonin stood not even 10 meters away from the Jinchuriki, still smirking. She slammed her hand again against the ground. Summoning Jutsu 2 smaller, blue snakes were now created, about 5 meters in length. Then Enko jumped on the head of the brown snake, and a few small fire blasts later, Shino's insects had to retreat or be burned to crisp. 2 hours of torture had passed, and teammate was finished with their survival training, literally. Hinata and Shino were both sitting on the torn ground, breathing hard after running away for so long from the 2 blue snakes. Naruto meanwhile looked the worse for wear. His robe was full of dirt, had some holes in it, and furthermore he had some blood stains on his face. Enko had thought it would be fun to throw sharp kunai at the blonde, while said boy tried to escape the big serpent's sharp fangs. Can we please do the mission now, crazy snake sensei? A tired Naruto asked, before he too collapsed on the ground. The Special Jonin only took a folder out from her trench coat and tossed it at their feet. This is your mission. If you don't complete it, I will find you and we will have some more quality time together. I think you understand? Despite their weariness, all 3 genin started to nod frantically. Ibiki needs me for some funny interrogation work at the TNI headquarters, so I have to leave you alone. Behave or else. Then Enko vanished in a swirl of leaves from their sight. A murderous smile of anticipation graced her lips as she disappeared. There was one thing Naruto was sure of now: he would sooner suffer one of Deidara's incoherent, unintelligible lectures on art than another hour with the crazy snake lady. Flashback. It was the day after he had met Deidara for the first time. Naruto had thought that learning how to blow up things would be awesome, but oh boy how wrong he was. The bomber told him that before he would teach him anything, He had to make sure the blonde genin understood the true beauty of his art and the principles behind. Only then he could become a fellow artist of destruction. Naruto liked explosions. Well, he probably liked them a lot, although he still couldn't really fathom what his new sensei was speaking all about. And what followed were the longest hours in the blonde's young life. Art is an explosion and art is a blast. This are the ground rules, but there is so much hidden wisdom in it. Listen while my pupil and you will come to see the light. You have to pour your whole soul into your creations. Only then they will reach the peak of true artistic greatness. Otherwise, fine art is the beauty of that single fleeting moment of explosion. Your art shall only live for that moment. Only in that split second you can experience the true beauty from within, the pureness of life and death. During all those hours of explanations, Naruto could only nod dumbly here and there. The genin sighed as Deidara came finally to an end. You didn't understand anything, did you, Naruto? Asked the former IWA Nin as he was finished with his speech. Sorry, sensei. I will try harder next time, I promise, Databeo. The Jinchuriki pumped his fist into the air to show off his usual enthusiasm. Flashback Kai. After roughly 15 minutes of rest, Hinata picked up the mission folder and opened it. What she found surprised her. A single paper, with only 3 lines of writing. She stared at the sheet of paper, contemplating if this was really a mission file or some sick joke of their surrogate sensei. But it bore the official stamp of the Hokage, so it had to be the real deal. Come on, Hinata, tell us about the mission. I would like to be done with another of this stupid chores. Whined an impatient Naruto. It's a C rank, and Naruto-kun. After the girl had said that, both male genin looked startled at her. Inspection duty and an A address in Konoha's Merchant D district. That is all it says. Then she handed the piece of paper to Shino. The Aburame studied the file for a few seconds. Highly unusual. Why? Because normally 3 genin aren't allowed to do C-rank missions without supervision from a higher-ranking ninja. The bug user gave the mission file afterwards to Naruto. The blonde intently scanned the document before he raised his voice. Seems legit. Come on, we should get going. I don't need another hour with the crazy snake sensei. With those words the boy stormed off, followed by his 2 teammates. All of them were quite eager to avoid another lesson of dodging a giant and hungry serpent. It didn't take them long to find the location of their mission, which was in fact a warehouse. As soon as they had located their target, the 3 were greeted by a chunin. Finally, your squad is here. Come inside, the work is already waiting for you. It's good that they found a replacement team so fast. Then the man led the 3 rookies into the building. Team 8 followed the chunin through the warehouse, past rows of boxes, parcels and shelves, till they reached a small office. There he gave every genin a clipboard with a list on it. You 3 are new here, so I will explain your duties for today. This building is one of 3 shipping hubs in Konoha. Everything that is sent into the city will be controlled here for abnormalities. The man pointed at Hinata. You will use your Byakugan to scan the new deliveries for anything unusual, like vermin or sabotage. He moved his hand and now gestured toward Shino. Your bugs should be able to detect most kinds of poison or other harmful contents in our food shipments. And lastly, you. He now looked at Naruto. You have no useful Kekai Genkai, so you will just do normal logistic work. The man made a pause. The clipboards I gave you contain the whereabouts of your workload and other information you need. Once you finished with everything, you bring back the list to me. I will pay you your share and then you can go home. The next hour's teammates spent with busy work in the warehouse. By the end of the day, all 3 were quite exhausted. Due to the long use of her bloodline limit, Hinata was drained of most of her chakra and her eyes were severely strained. Almost the same could be said for Shino. Because of his long utilization of the Kikeichu bugs, his reserves were quite low now. Naruto, on the other hand, was just physically winded from carrying heavy boxes for the better part of the day. At least the payment was much better than what they normally got for their simple D-rank missions. But one thing was sure for all 3, Enko-sensei was some kind of oppressor and had enjoyed their suffering. It was a few minutes before the clock would hit 8 o'clock a.m. and Team 8 was again in the clearing of Training Ground 42, as it was their usual routine, waiting for the arrival of their sensei. Naruto's eyes were glued on his new book. His teammates had taken several glances at him already, not really believing that the Uzumaki would read something on his own free will. Hinata even had used her Byakugan to take a look on the title and the contents of the book, and was quite baffled by the topic. The blonde boy was really interested in something so complex as the sealing arts? Good morning, had a good day yesterday with your surrogate sensei? Asked Kurenai, as she entered the training ground. Naruto immediately jumped, glared at the black-haired jonin and pointed an accusing finger at her. You tried to kill us. The snake lady is crazy, crazy I say. Enko isn't that bad, you are surely exaggerating. Their sensei tried to feign ignorance, although she knew that the special jonin could be really strenuous. Not that bad? She hunted us down with her snakes for 2 hours, survival training my ass. It was easy to see how upset the blonde was. At least the mission wasn't halfway bad and we were paid quite well. Shino and Hinata watched the exchange in silence. They were almost used to Naruto's attitude by now. The Hyuga girl had to subdue some giggles and even Shino nearly smiled at the blonde's antics. The black-haired Jonin meanwhile thought she had to have a talk with the snake summoner how to treat her genin. She needed them alive after all. You did good on your second C rank. Normally this kind of work is done by retired shinobi or academy dropouts, but one of the usual teams was unavailable yesterday. Don't expect to do such duties often. Kurenai explained the whole situation to them. Today we will train for a while with another genin team. All three genin gave their sensei questioning looks. You wanted some help with your taijutsu Naruto, and I got the right person to help you. He is the greatest taijutsu master of Konoha. I have to warn you though, the jonin in question is a bit eccentric. So you want to say most of Konoha's jonin, except you sensei, are oddballs? The blonde deadpanned. As soon as the genin had uttered these words, two green blurs rushed into the clearing. A loud, almost booming voice pierced the silence. Very youthful of you, Lee. You still need to train harder though, if you want to beat me. But never give up, you're a true genius of hard work. Before teammates stood two people, both clothed in hideous green spandex. One of them was an adult, while the other one was a kid about their age, well maybe a year or two older. The young boy looked almost like a mini-me version of the man. Thank you, Guy-sensei. The smaller green-clad ninja shouted. If I can't train harder, I will run 100 laps around Konoha on my hands. And if I can't do that I will do 10,000 push-ups. And, that's enough, Lee. Then the man turned his attention towards the three genin of Team 8. I am Mato Guy, Konoha's sublime green beast of prey and the eternal rival of the ever-hip and cool Kakashi Hatake. And to my right is my most youthful pupil, Rock Lee. Both of the strange ninja then gave their best nice guy pose. Naruto, Hinata and even Shino stared at the new arrivals with open mouths. Those two were the weirdest thing they had ever seen. Thoughts of being cursed or something like that entered their minds. Wasn't Enko-sensei bad enough? A few seconds later 2 more people entered the training ground. Guy-sensei, I told you to wait for us, called an angry feminine voice. Ah, and this are my other 2 youthful students, Tenten and Niji Hyuga. The strange jonin explained and pointed towards the 2 newcomers. As soon as Hinata had heard the name Niji, she averted her gaze towards the ground and took a few steps back, hiding partially behind Shino. A fact that everyone else easily registered. Hinata-sama, spoke a cold, arrogant voice. And Niji and I-san? Was the meek reply the girl stuttered out. Before the atmosphere could get any more menacing, the male jonin raised his voice again. So Kurenai, who of those 3 requires my help to fan his flames of youth even brighter? The blonde Jinchuriki slowly raised his hand. That would be me, I think. He spoke hesitantly. Some pointers in my taijutsu would be really useful. A few minutes later the group was split up. Lee would be tutored by Kurenai in an attempt to teach him how to break out of genjutsus. Shino and Niji would spar against each other. Tenten and Hinata would work on their weapon skills, and finally Naruto was going to have a private session with the green-clad jonin to work on his taijutsu. Soon the Jinchuriki found himself standing on the edge of the clearing with Guy. The blonde didn't know what to make of the man. Kurenai-sensei had said he was the best taijutsu master in Konoha, but he was probably the most eccentric person Naruto had met until now. Your sensei told me, what are you looking for? The jonin took 3 scrolls out from his flak jacket. Each one contains a kata for a technique to grab and immobilize your enemies. Those are just basics, so you should be able to easily integrate them into your current forms. Furthermore, they can be extended through more complex maneuvers. For the next 3 hours I will supervise you in their use. Afterwards you can keep the scrolls and train on your own. Now let's start our youthful exercise. The next hours were quite hard on the blonde. Hundreds of repetitions per kata, and almost every time the jonin had corrected him on some small nuance in his stance, or the execution of the technique. The man was a master of taijutsu, that was clear by now for Naruto. Also Guy had criticized Naruto's whole taijutsu stance, because it was nothing more than a brawling style. But the boy didn't want to become a specialist in melee combat, and was quite happy with his improvised style, so the jonin's complaints mostly fell on deaf ears. Naruto could be quite stubborn if he intended to. At the end of their joint training session the 2 teams bade each other farewell. While Team 8 watched the others leave, Niji raised his ice-cold voice. Hinata-sama, you are even weaker than I presumed. Trying to steer away from the traditional Hyuga teachings will accomplish nothing. Fate has already decreed that you are a nothing but a pathetic failure. You can't change what you are, no matter how hard you fight it. Even you with your clouded eyes should be able to see this truth. Naruto got worked up more and more by every word the Hyuga spoke. The blonde started to grit his teeth, and at the end of the speech, he was ready to jump this bastard and punch him hard in the face. This was the moment when the Jinchuriki felt a hand on his shoulder. He turned around and an angry blue orbs met sad lavender ones, and he could see the tears building up in Hinata's eyes. She shook her head, gesturing that the girl didn't want that Naruto started a fight because of her. Niji, that was really unyouthful of you. Guy chided the Hyuga. I told you not to bring up anything like that while we were here. I don't care about the problems you have with the main branch, but your behavior won't go unpunished this time. The boy didn't even turn around during the whole ordeal and continued his way, walking slowly away from the training grounds, followed by his team and an angry sensei. As soon as Team 9 had vanished from their sight, Hinata turned around and ran away as fast as she could, some tears falling down from her face. Before anyone else of her team could react, the girl had already disappeared from their view into the woods surrounding Training Ground 42. Kurenai made a move to follow the distraught girl, but Naruto raised his hand and started speaking. Sensei, I think that I probably can help Hinata better than you. I have known for almost as long as I can remember how it is to be treated like a worthless failure, so let me speak to her, please. Then the blonde left wordlessly, trying to track down his female teammate. The black-haired Jonin and Shino could only stare at the retreating back of the blonde Jinchuriki and both hoped that everything would turn out alright. Hinata hadn't deserved the uncalled words from her family member. Naruto was glad that Kurenai had shown him the basic of tracking. In her hurried flight, Hinata had left a good trail for him, one that the blonde could easily follow. A few minutes later, the boy spotted his distraught teammate. She was on her knees, weeping and sobbing, hands over her face, frantically trying to wipe away the tears. In fact, she looked like a mess. Seeing her like this hurt the boy. Nobody deserved being in such a sorry state. Slowly he approached her. As soon as he was in reach, he pulled her into a comforting hug, trying to ease her pain and suffering. First the girl was rigid like a board in his arms, although soon she relaxed and grabbed his robe, clinging hard onto him. Then she started sobbing even louder than before and suddenly buried her face into his chest. It's going to be okay, Niji is wrong, you know? Naruto tried his best to soothe the worries of the young heiress in his arms. It was only as he spoke that Hinata finally recognized which person was helping here. Under normal circumstances she would have fainted or be embarrassed to death about the state in which Naruto was seeing her, but she was far beyond that point by now. She just wanted to enjoy the warm, comforting embrace, something she had missed since the death of her mother so long ago. Meanwhile, Naruto wasn't so sure anymore if he was the right person to help Hinata. He probably understood the pain she was in, but it wasn't like he had any experience in how to ease the worries of someone. The blonde's social abilities were severely lacking sometimes, like in this moment. He decided to go with what he would have liked to hear when he was in a similar distraught state. Don't let those dark thoughts cloud your mind, Hinata. You're much stronger than that. BB but HEWW was RR right. I'm J just PP pathetic AA and everybody KK knows it. I'm JJ just a BB burden T to E everyone. It was the first time that Naruto got a reply from the girl, just not the one he wanted to hear. Don't you dare to think such bullshit. You are strong, you are better than Shino or Aya Taijutsu, you are really good with those Senbon needles of yours and our team needs you. So don't you dare to believe any of the crap this bastard had spewed out. Naruto spoke much louder than he had intended. Hinata flinched at the blonde's outburst, then she asked with small voice. WWYARYUH helping me. I'm not WW worth why your time and Naruto Keikun. The Jinchuriki patted her back. You are my friend, my teammate, I will always help you. I will always believe in you, Databeo. And don't forget Kurenai-sensei and Shino, I am sure they feel the same way too. We are there for you, that is what friends are for, isn't it? The heartfelt speech of the Jinchuriki had visibly calmed down the brunette. She had stopped crying and had loosened her grab on the blonde. But now Hinata realized in which position she was. Her face immediately turned a crimson red and then she fainted promptly in the boy's arms. Feeling the girl go limp, Naruto looked down, only to see her puffy red eyes closed and a small smile on her face. Now he was reassured that everything would turn out right, eventually. Naruto had propped the Hyuga girl's unconscious body against one of the surrounding trees and now had only to wait till she would wake up again. First the blonde had contemplated if he should bring the passed-out brunette back to the rest of Team 8, but in the end he decided it was better to wait till she would wake up. It wouldn't hurt to give his female teammate some time to deal with the whole situation, which that one bastard had created. The Jinchuriki gritted his teeth as he remembered what had happened not so long ago. This was the second time, since he had returned, that he was certainly ready to pound someone to a bloody pulp. Naruto knew he was easy to agitate, even before he had his little adventure trip with Deidara. Although nowadays the blonde was ready to give everyone a piece of his mind and if this would include some beating up, well why not? He shook his head, that couldn't be right or could it? The months away under Day's tutelage had given the demon host some new perspectives on life. But had the days away from his birthplace also unleashed some of his hidden anger? Naruto wasn't stupid, okay probably he was a bit foolish sometimes. Still he knew that the years of shunning and rejection from the village had instilled some dark feelings in him, though who wouldn't be affected by such injustice? The further confinement, which came with his return to Konoha, probably had this effects on him and his temper. The blonde was glad that Hinata had stopped him, before things would have gone out of hand. Still that prick Niji deserved some beating. Somebody had to remove the lamp post from the stuck-up bastard's ass. A groan brought Naruto out of his musings. The Jinchuriki looked over to the now stirring form of his female teammate. Hinata's eyes fluttered open and she took in her surroundings. After seeing Naruto leaning against one of the trees, the memories of what had happened came back to her. The girl knew that Niji had some major problems with her, but still she hadn't expected he would tell her off so harsh while in the presence of his and her team. She wasn't happy with how she reacted to his insult, however it had brought so many bad memories back. Of times when her father or the clan elders had told her how weak and useless she was. Or when her little sister had beaten her, she could see the disappointment in her father's eyes and how Hanabi thought that she was a waste of her time. The recollection of those horrible events depressed the Hyuga girl greatly. Glad that you are awake again, feeling better? Or do you want some more time to compose yourself before we go back? Naruto asked with concern in his voice. The girl only nodded her head and pulled herself up from the ground, then both started walking to the training ground in a slow, steady pace. The blonde was the first, who broke the silence on their way back. The stuck-up bastard isn't really your big brother? She could hear the annoyance in Naruto's voice as he spoke about Niji. My cousin. The Hyuga replied, almost like a whisper. There are some sea conflicts between us. The male genin put a hand on her shoulder. The heiress flinched a bit at the sudden contact. You don't need to tell me anything about those issues, Hinata. Just remember Shino, Kurenai-sensei, and I are there for you, if you need us. Then he flashed her one of his trademark smiles, which in turn made the poor girl flush a light shade of pink. Thanks for stopping me, by the way. My anger got the better of me. Would have done something I would later regret, probably making him a piece of my art. Your art? Replied a quite confused Hinata. She didn't know what the boy was talking about now. Nothing. The blonde was a bit stressed out. Unknowingly he had talked quite much like Deidara with his reply. How much had his little trip really affected him? Although as long as he wasn't starting to give lessons for hours about the beauty of his explosions, all hope wasn't lost. After the strange, abrupt ending of their conversation, both genin continued their track back in silence. When the blonde and the brunette finally reached training ground 42, Shino and Kurenai were already waiting anxiously for them. Like Naruto, both assured her that Niji was wrong with his assumptions about her. To all three she was a valuable comrade, a friend, an important person, no matter what anybody else thought. A small smile formed on the Hyuga girl's face. The worries of Team 8 were blown away as they saw this, at least for now. Later on her way back home, Hinata was deep in thoughts. The words of recognition she got from Naruto, Kurenai and Shino had soothed her. She had friends, a team, and they needed her. She couldn't afford to be weak now. She had to be strong, if not for herself, then at least for them. They counted on her, they believed in her. She wouldn't disappoint those people, who trusted her with their lives. This day Hinata vowed to herself that she would make her friends, her sensei, her team proud. She surely would prove her family, her father, her cousin wrong. The next training day everything was more or less back to normal. Kurenai looked at her students, who were sitting before her in on of the craters of the training ground. Her team had completed their usual routine and normally now they would do missions afterwards, but today the woman had other plans for them. She wanted to intensify their training, instead of spending a few hours with weeding gardens or chasing cats. Currently the Jonin wasn't so sure if her team would compete at the Chunin exams, however that didn't mean she would take training them easy. The black-haired woman had planned something special for every one of them. She took out a small scroll and unrolled it, then she unsealed a small lunch, a bunch of rice balls and canteens of water for her team. Today there won't be any missions, instead we will extend your training by another 3 hours. I brought you some food. After we all have eaten, every one of you will get some special attention from me. When she had finished her speech, the woman gave her team a reassuring smile. Once everyone had eaten, Kurenai created 2 shadow clones to supervise her charges separately. She and her 2 copies split up the team. Each Jonin led one of the genin to another part of the training ground, so that each group could work undisturbed from the others. With Naruto, I have seen what you were reading yesterday morning, so you started delving into the sealing arts. Any special reason for that? The female had a tiny hint of curiosity in her voice. She hadn't expected that somebody like the blonde boy would be interested in one of the most difficult ninja styles available. You're right, sensei. I started learning Fuinjutsu a few days ago. In fact, there are 2 reasons for my choice. First of all, it's part of my heritage as Uzumaki. I could at least try to honor my ancestors by learning it. Secondly, I thought it would be a good idea. Well, if I could make my own explosive tags, it would give me some more destructive power. At the end of his explanation, the Jinchuriki grinned at his teacher. The idea of having even more explosions available excited the boy greatly. The Hokage had briefed Kurenai about the Uzumaki clan, and she had expected that answer from her genin. However, the thought that the blonde could have tons of explosive tags at his hands started to worry her. He was already dangerous enough for her taste. Not that she could stop him anyways, the boy would learn sealing with or without her help, she was sure of it. As you know, I am a genjutsu master. My experience with Fuinjutsu is quite limited. However, I still can help you with your studies. The black-haired woman explained to Naruto. Really, sensei? So what are we going to do? The boy was bouncing with energy by now. He was always happy to learn something that would help him with his jutsus. Kurenai gave him a devious smirk. Oh, I doubt you will like this exercise. She pulled out a blank scroll, an inkwell and a brush from one of her pouches. The examples of your handwriting that I have seen were terrible for Fuinjutsu, although it needs to be clean and proper. So today you will do some basic calligraphy practice. Then she handed over the items to the boy. You can keep those utensils at the end of the lesson. The blonde could only groan. He had already read in his book that for making seals he would need a steady and clean handwriting, otherwise the seals would blow up in his face. But he hadn't planned on starting to address this weakness, till he was completely through the whole manual. It couldn't be helped now, and so he began writing kanji under the watchful eye of his sensei. With Hinata, the progress you have shown with Senban is astonishing. Watching the last training sessions with your teammates, you were able to hit them with relative ease. So today I will be your opponent, don't hold back against me, give it your all, Hinata," announced the black-haired jonin. Then she vanished from the girl's view. The Hyuga girl opened her leg pouch, which was stuffed to the brim with iron needles. She slipped into something that vaguely resembled her Juken stance, activated the Byakugan and equipped herself with 3 Senban per hand, a metal spike always between 2 fingers. With the needles sticking out between her knuckles, her hands almost looked like claws. Kurenai knew what the girl was doing, and she was ready as the onslaught began. She wasn't a jonin for nothing, and so it wasn't too hard for her to avoid the projectiles. Meanwhile, Hinata launched attack after attack on her sensei, throwing 3 Senban at once, switching to the other hand, taking out new ammunition, then rinse and repeat. With fluid movements, the girl continuously renewed her assaults. It could have looked almost beautiful to an onlooker, if it wasn't so deadly. However, a sudden attack stopped the girl in her tracks. Clang! She could deflected the thrown kunai with the Senban in her left hand and the weapon fell harmlessly to the ground. But the Hyuga hadn't expected this counterattack from her sensei. "You can't be so stationary, Hinata, you need to be on the move too sometimes," was the advice Kurenai gave her student. "That is one of your current weaknesses. I will show you several more." As if on cue, the black-haired jonin suddenly appeared before the girl and swung her right arm in straightforward attack. Hinata avoided the strike with a quick sidestep, and then thrusted both her Senban-filled hands forward in a stabbing motion. Although the only thing she hit was thin air, her sensei had already vanished again and was nowhere to be seen. Good, even when you tried to stay away from your enemies, you always have to be prepared for close combat attacks, were the words of praise Hinata could hear from Kurenai. Her adversary was fast. The Hyuga girl had a hard time to follow the movements of the jonin, and hadn't scored a single hit in the whole conflict. After launching another attack at the quick-moving target, Hinata tried to grab 3 more needles, although there weren't any left. Had she already used up all 200 Senban that were in her pouch, already out of ammunition? "What are you going to do now?" slightly mocked the black-haired jonin her student. The Hyuga girl sighed. This was going to be a long and tiring training day. "With Shino, I have decided that you will be the one of my genin, who will learn how to wield genjutsu. You are the most suited for this fine art of all 3, Shino. Furthermore, you need to broaden your arsenal. Currently you mostly rely on your clan jutsus." Kurenai spoke with absolute conviction in her voice. "Thank you, sensei. Why?" "Because you consider me worthy enough to learn your most prized art from you. Though are you sure that I am the correct choice?" asked the Aburame with some hidden worry in his voice. The jonin had long thought about who of her team would learn how to use genjutsu from her. All of them were able to discover and free themselves of illusion. She had made sure of that by now. Naruto was out of question. She was happy that the blonde was finally able to dispel illusions, but he probably would never be able to cast any of them. First, she had favored Hinata. The girl had the necessary chakra control to use genjutsu. However, the Hyuga heiress had discovered her love for Senban, and the jonin didn't want it to distract her attention towards another subject. In the end, Kurenai had decided she would teach Shino. The boy was smart, and his control over chakra was good enough. "Yes, you will learn genjutsu from me. I am sure you will make me proud, so don't doubt yourself and your abilities." The brown-haired genin bowed slightly before his sensei. Afterwards he spoke. "Then we should begin. There is much to learn from me, I am sure of that. You already know the basics of genjutsu, but I will give you a quick reminder. Illusionary techniques affect the enemy's senses and generate something you could call hallucinations. The more senses are targeted, the harder it gets to reveal the illusion." Kurenai made a small pause to let the said sink in. There are 2 different ways to cast a genjutsu onto someone. Either by affecting the person through one of his senses, the most common ways are vision or hearing, or through forcing your chakra directly into your victim's body, for example by a simple touch. "Then with which method do we start, sensei?" asked Shino in his usual monotone voice. The jonin thought her student could be a bit more enthusiastic, though that was Shino after all. She wouldn't call him overly emotional. "With the easiest way. You will lay your hands on my head and force a small amount of your chakra into me. Try to concentrate on my vision. I will give you continuous responses. How are you doing? And you can adapt your tries accordingly. This first steps are needed, so that you get the right idea and feeling how you must mold the chakra to have certain effects on your target's mind. No need to worry, you won't be able to hurt the real me. This body is only a shadow clone." After Kurenai had said that, the Aburame started with his exercise. 3 days later, teammate was engaged in a 3-on-1 sparring match. Shino was surrounded by a swarm of Kikechu. Hinata and 5 of Naruto's shadow clones were in close-quarter combat with their sensei, and the real blonde meanwhile watched the whole onslaught from the sidelines, supporting the melee attack team through kunai and shuriken. Everybody came to a halt as a lone figure entered the training ground. "Kurenai-san, your team is required for an urgent mission," spoke the winded black-haired chunin, Afterwards he handed a scroll over to the Jonin-sensei. Hokage-sama requested that you and your genin head out as soon as possible. After he had relayed the orders, the man left the clearing. Kurenai took a quick look at the scroll's contents, before she started speaking with a commanding voice. Gather everything you need for a short-term mission outside of the village, although pack lightly. We meet in 30 minutes at the main gates. Once they had received the quick instructions from their leader, Naruto, Shino and Hinata left Training Ground 42 in a hurry, trying to get their necessities ready in the short time limit they had been given. The blonde Jinchuriki was the first one that arrived at the main exit of Konoha. His encampment wasn't that far away from their usual training ground, so it didn't take him all that long to get ready for the oncoming mission. The rest of his comrades and his sensei showed up within the next several minutes. All three genin had only a lightly filled backpack and a bedroll with them, minimal package like Kurenai had requested. The black-haired jonin made a simple hand gesture, then she headed out. Her three students followed in a standard triangle formation. It wasn't hard for the genin team to understand what her sensei had signaled. The basic sign language used by Konoha Nin was already drilled into them during their academy years. So sensei, what is this emergency mission all about? Asked a curious Naruto, while he and his team were hopping from tree to tree. Kurenai didn't even turn her head around and started speaking. We have to apprehend 3 fugitive Konoha citizen, alive if possible. Those 3 have embezzled almost 1 million ryo from Konoha's official accounts over the last months. Is such a mission not normally assigned to an ANBU Hunter Nin squad? Replied the baffled blonde genin. Before Kurenai could answer, the Aburame boy raised his voice. I think you are mistaken here, Naruto. Because sensei only said fugitive citizen, not ninja, therefore a squad of genin should be sufficient. Hokage-sama surely wouldn't waste ANBU on a trivial task, like capturing criminal civilians. Excellent perception, Shino. Praised the jonin, her subordinate. Although those 3 have a bit of a ninja training. In fact, you 3 probably know them. Our targets are the members of the former Team 4, which graduated in the same class as you. They dropped out of the shinobi program after they failed the real genin test and were afterwards employed in one of the administrative offices of Konoha. See, can you tell us their names, Kurenai-sensei? Was the question from Hinata. Ami, Kasumi and Fuki, remember them? Replied Kurenai almost instantly. Every genin of Team 8 could recall those 3 females. After all, they were an infamous group of school bullies. Naruto, Hinata and Shino were always sort of outsiders during the academy, and so all of them had had some unpleasant encounters with those girls. The black-haired jonin could almost feel the sour mood radiating of her team after she mentioned the names of their targets. Hinata, activate your Byakugan periodically and scan the surroundings for them. Shino, spread out your Kikaichu and let them look for any traces. The same goes for you, Naruto. I want 10 of your shadow clones to survey the area. Through the mission file, Kurenai knew the general direction in which the 3 criminals were traveling. While they had a day head start, that wouldn't matter against trained ninja. Hi, sensei. Replied the 3 genin in unison and started with their assigned tasks. About 4 hours of search later, Naruto stopped the group. One of my clones has found them. Afterwards he dispelled. They are about 1 kilometer to the northwest, resting in the open. Lead the way then. Replied teammate Jonin-sensei. You 3 will surround them and capture the targets on your own. No lethal force, if not necessary. This goes double for you, Mr. Shortfuse. I am sure you remember our last talk. We don't need another of your messy explosions. The blonde genin knew his teacher was right, though he still couldn't stop the scowl that formed on his face. Particularly because he didn't like the nickname she had given him. It didn't take the team long to arrive on the location Naruto's clone had found, and clearly there in the clearing sat the 3 wanted females. Now was the time to catch the fugitives. Kurenai directed her genin through hand signs to their respective positions. The 3 ninja moved in cover of the trees. They were anxious and waited for their sensei to give the signal to start. As soon as they received the go, Naruto, Shino and Hinata rushed in. From the Aburame's sleeves, countless of bugs rose into the air, forming a wall of insects. Meanwhile, the blonde Jinchuriki conjured 12 solid copies, which then created a blockade. The 3 criminal girls shrieked and were frozen as the attack began. They thought they were safe here, a major mistake from them. On 2 sides there was no escape for them. The path was either blocked by a swarm of bugs or a wall of Narutos, which all had kunai in their hands. The only chance for escape was through the battle-ready Hyuga heiress. Come on, Fuki, Kasumi, we can take the weak, pale-eyed freak. Ami tried to sound strong and threatening, however her voice shook slightly. The girl pulled out a kunai and stormed at Hinata. Her conspirators followed suit. The Hyuga girl ducked below a sloppy swipe with the kunai. In a smooth motion, she closed several tenketsu on Ami's arm and the weapon in the girl's hand dropped to the ground. The purple-haired attacker took several steps back and her accomplices stopped their advance. Her whole right arm was now hanging uselessly in the air. Ami glared at the lavender-eyed girl before her, and then rushed forward again, this time trying to strike with her still functional left arm. Hinata easily danced around this attack and only tapped her adversary lightly on the right knee as she avoided the blow. In response to the counter, Ami crashed head-first into the dirt and stayed down. Meanwhile, Naruto and Shino had bound the hands of the other 2 girls, who could only stare in shock at how effortlessly their leader was defeated by the timid Hyuga. Neither of the two put up any resistance to their capture after seeing this display. The young kunoichi still stood in her juken stance, watchfully observing the downed form of Ami. She wouldn't move a meter away till also the last enemy was safely captured. The blonde Jinchuriki approached the duo and knelt down beside the fallen girl. He just wanted to start slipping the rope around the right arm of Ami, as the female shifted slightly, a kunai in her left hand. Hinata had seen that the purple-haired girl had landed on the kunai that she dropped during her first attack. But the female genin had not expected this last desperate move. As soon as she spotted the attack on her teammate, the Hyuga girl rushed forward. With full force she crashed her juken-empowered palm against the chest of Ami. The body of the hit female skidded several meters back. A damp gurgling sound could be heard and blood-red foam spewed out from Ami's mouth. Afterwards she started to convulse, but stopped a few seconds later, and then there was only silence. Hinata could only stare at the limp form that lay a few steps before her motionless on the ground. With the Byakugan still activated, the Hyuga could almost clearly see what had happened due to her vicious attack. Parts of Ami's lungs and heart had liquefied, the girl died in a matter of seconds. Nobody could have survived that. The brunette was frozen in shock. This probably was the first time she wished she would faint, but today the gods didn't have mercy with her. Fuki and Kasumi meanwhile had collapsed unconscious on the ground, after seeing the gruesome death of her friend. Shino watched over the two fallen bodies without nearly any hint of emotion on his face. If he looked good enough, although, you could see the worry it hid. Naruto was flabbergasted, not because he had to see the death struggle, he was hardened enough to stomach this. The Jinchuriki just hadn't expected that Hinata would go for a killing blow, though he presumed she did it probably out of pure instinct. Kurenai entered the clearing and tossed the storage scroll to her blonde genin. Naruto, Shino, secure the prisoners and set up a camp somewhere in the surroundings, however far enough away from here. Then she dragged the stock-still Hinata away from the scene of event. Hours later, the night had already fallen. Naruto was sitting by the campfire, thinking about the recent turn of events. He had volunteered to take the first night watch. The blonde wasn't so sure if somehow the whole mess wasn't his fault. He was too careless again. But another part of him knew that such things regularly happen on missions. It was a pitch-black new moon night, and the woods were hulled in eerie silence. The Jinchuriki suspected the rest of his team, and the captives were asleep. Without the light of the fire he wouldn't even see the hand in front of his face. A sudden noise startled the boy and he gripped the kunai in his hand firmly. It's just me, and Naruto Keikuin. I see she can't sleep. The sound of the Hyuga girl's voice was barely above a whisper. You can sit by the fire with me, if you want. The male genin replied in a pensive tone. The boy didn't know how he should talk to Hinata about what had happened with Ami, and for now he decided he would wait if the girl started talking on her own. And so for almost an hour both teens sat around the campfire in silence. Finally the brunette raised her voice. How do you do it? How do I do what? Naruto tried his hardest not to sound irritated, still the question sounded fairly strange to him, and the waiting till the heiress was ready to talk to him hadn't helped his mood. Why you look so calm, back then when you killed. And I just feel so guilty. I can still see her face every time I close my eyes. Hinata sounded almost broken now. Naruto nearly had to grin at her question. He had asked Deidara something very similar. Flashback. It was a few days after Naruto had taken the lives of the bounty hunters. He and the bomber had just set up a camp for the night, and were now eating some of their rations. Deidara-sensei, I want it to go away, the guilt, the images, the nightmares. How do you deal with it? I want to feel nothing at all. I know it was necessary, so why does it trouble me so much? The blonde genin begged for an answer. The missing nin's face took on a strange expression. His eyes got a faraway look, and he stared off into empty space. You learn to deal with it, I know this sounds stupid, however you get somewhat used to it. You will be able to deal with eventually, but it takes time. The reply sounded almost sagely. There is one thing although, hope that you will always feel regret and guilt about your actions. Even though we ninjas are killers, we are still also humans. Pray that you never lose those emotions. Flashback Kai. The feelings never go away, Hinata. You just learn how to better deal with them. Naruto took a deep breath. I had nightmares for more than a week after my first kill. Even now, sometimes the faces of my victims pop up in my head. The blonde moved closer to the Hyuga girl and put his hand on her shoulder. Eventually you will be able to handle it, though always remember as long as you feel something while you kill, you are still a human being. Then he reassuringly squeezed her shoulder. Kurenai-sensei probably told you something similar, but this is an experience which you have to overcome alone, nobody can help you with it. Now you should go back to sleep, you will need it tomorrow. Shino stepped out of the shadows and scared both of his teammates. You should also go to sleep, Naruto. Why? Because it's my turn of the night watch now. The blonde and the brunette raised from the ground and bade Shino a good night. Afterwards they went to sleep. The next day for Team 8 came faster than they had anticipated. Kurenai had taken the last few hours of night watch, directly after Shino. Now it wasn't even 6 in the morning and the black-haired Jonin unceremoniously woke up her 3 charges. She told them they had 15 minutes to pack together their belongings and get ready for the track back to Konoha. The sun had only barely risen on the horizon, dipping the surrounding woodlands into a mix of orange and gray colors. Kasumi and Fuki, the two captured former genin, were still asleep and tightly bound to a tree, as the three sleepy genin raised from their respective resting places. While it took Shino and Naruto only about 1 to 2 minutes to get rid of the drowsiness the two felt, Hinata wasn't so lucky today. The poor girl hadn't gotten much more than 2 or 3 hours sleep during the whole night. The current Hyuga heiress had bags under her eyes and her skin looked 1 or 2 shades paler than normal. The only thought on her mind was now to get back home safely. At least nobody tried to talk to her about yesterday's events. The young kunoichi was glad for the consideration she received from her team. More than once the girl had re-experienced her first kill in last night's dreams, only to wake up soaked in sweat with 1,000 thoughts flashing through her troubled mind. For now she would try to bury all those horrible images in some corner deep in her head. Not the best solution, though she was still on a mission, so this issue had to wait until later. It didn't take them long to pack up everything and soon the 4 shinobi and the 2 prisoners were on the move. Kurenai and Hinata had taken the front, followed by their prisoners in the middle. Finally the 2 male shinobi secured the rear of the group. Team 8 had to travel slower than they were used to, mainly because of the 2 civilians in tow. It was astonishing, only a few months ago all 5 youngsters were somewhat equal, having received the same education in the academy. However now the 3 genin could move and act almost like seasoned ninja, while the 2 remaining dropouts had fallen back to being nothing more than regular civilians. The whole 6 hours track back to Konoha was made in silence. Nobody was especially interested to hold any conversations. As the team reached the main gates, Kurenai pulled out the mission scroll and handed it to one of the chunin guarding Konoha's entrance. Said ninja took a look at the documents, gave an acknowledging nod and returned them to the black-haired jonin. After this short procedure the group started moving again, following their leader. A few minutes later Naruto raised his voice. "Where are we going, sensei? This isn't the way to the Hokage Tower. Did you forget the regulations how to proceed with captives? All individuals which are captured during missions are to be brought to the torture and interrogation department for thorough checkups and further questioning." Kurenai reminded her blonde student. The jonin could see the 2 civilians flinch as they heard about their impending fate. "Oh, I knew that all along, Databeo. I just wanted to make sure you knew it to sensei," replied the Jinchuriki awkwardly, while he rubbed his neck in embarrassment with one hand. Kurenai, Shino and even Hinata had to smile at the antics of their teammate. The 2 kunoichi had to suppress some giggles. While the blonde could be a killer if the situation needed, his carefree spirit was still strong in him. Since his return he seemed sharper and a bit smarter, but sometimes like now his old cluelessness resurfaced. It didn't take the group long to reach their destination, the complex of the Kanehigakure Intelligence Division. Although before Team 8 and their prisoners could enter they were stopped by 2 Umbu guards that suddenly appeared in front of them out of thin air. One of the masked men spoke up. "Entrance for jonin and authorized personnel only. You should know the protocol, Kurenai-san." The black-haired woman grumbled. "Fine, but I need to deliver those 2 to Enko." She pointed at Fuki and Kasumi. As soon as he heard the requests, the Umbu who hadn't spoken a word vanished in a cloud of smoke. They hadn't wait long for the snake mistress to arrive. The purple-haired woman smiled as she saw who waited for her. "Oh, Kurenai-chan, you brought me new playmates?" The special jonin asked with a happy and slightly disturbing voice, while she had a creepy smile etched on her face. The team leader took out the mission scroll and tossed it to the interrogator. "Just sign up their delivery, and they are all yours." The 2 civilian girls could watch the exchange between the mature kunoichis only with a growing feeling of doom. Whatever the purple-haired woman had in store for them couldn't be good. Enko quickly scanned the mission scroll. "Shouldn't there be 3? You don't grow weak, Kure-chan. Don't say none of them escaped your team? I thought you said your little genin were better than that." Now the snake mistress looked almost disappointed at her friend. The black-haired woman shook her head, then she took out a small scroll from one of her pouches and handed it to her counterpart. "Oh, I understand. Probably Inoichi can secure some information from the brain. Anything else you need?" spoke Enko as she put the scroll with Ami's dead body away. "In fact, there is really something I wanted to ask you." Teammate Jonin-sensei stepped closer to the special jonin and whispered something into her ear. A dangerous grin spread on the purple-haired woman's face. "Sure, no problem. But you owe me a girl's night out for that favor." Enko moved towards the 2 captives and put her arms around them. "Come on, girls, we 3 have a busy schedule. Can't miss any of the fun, now can we?" With those words Enko ushered Fuki and Kasumi inside the building. Meanwhile Kurenai turned towards her team and addressed them. "The mission ends here. I will take the report to the Hokage myself. The rest of the day is free time for you, so use it wisely. After what happened I am sure all of us could need some time to relax. Remember tomorrow is our day off, so we see each other in 2 days. 8:00 a.m., Training Ground 42, hopefully as lively as ever." After the jonin spoke the last words she moved her gaze towards Hinata. "If one of you needs something you can always seek me out. My door is always open for you." Then the members of Team 8 wished each other farewell and split up. The 3 genin walked towards their respective homes, while Kurenai made her way to deliver the recent report to the village leader. Following their split up, Naruto was on the way to the woods surrounding the training ground his team usually used, the place where he currently lived, as something interesting caught his eye. The way through the western outskirts of Konoha had brought the blonde genin to some old, near-derelict temple. Normally such a building wouldn't catch the Jinchuriki's interest. However, right above the entrance portal was a large spiral engraved into the otherwise blank stone. The same symbol was on all the regular shinobi clothes of Konoha, but to Naruto it had so much more meaning. At least since Deidara had informed the blonde boy about the once famous Uzumaki clan, his heritage. And so the demon host could only do one thing to still his curiosity: enter the shrine. The only thing notable he could find in the temple was a strange room, with about 30 creepy masks hanging on one wall. Naruto wasn't sure why, though he felt quite uncomfortable in the vicinity of those ancient relics. The most interesting thing for him, although weren't the masks, the walls and the whole shrine were literally littered with Uzumaki spirals. Whatever this building once was, it had to be linked to his clan. After he checked the temple, the blonde genin examined the rest of the complex. The whole area was surrounded by a large wall, almost 2 meters in height, with the only opening in the enormous barricade located right before the shrine. Behind the temple was a large open field, and at the boundary wall sat another building. The blonde slowly approached the house at the end of the clearing. Compared to the shrine, it was small and featureless. A door and 4 windows adorned the front. The hinges had broken down long ago, and the wooden door had crashed onto the porch. Inside of the building was only chaos, namely destroyed and rotten furnishings. Furthermore, evidence that some wild animals had used the house as shelter. The home had 4 rooms, and compared to the temple, it looked like somebody had lived in here a long time ago. On the left side of the house was an old well which still could provide water. Naruto concluded that this building most probably belonged to the caretaker of the shrine. After a thorough exam of the whole complex, the blonde genin was sure that the structures of both buildings were mostly intact. The same could also be said for the wall surrounding everything. Moreover, he was convinced, whatever this here was, it belonged to the Uzumaki clan. The first, real connection in Konoha to his lost ancestors. In the end, it wasn't a hard decision for Naruto. He would move in here and try to bring the whole complex back to old glory. That in itself was although a mammoth task. While nothing seemed to be damaged beyond repair, the place however was quite run down. At least he had 1.5 days time to move his spare belongings in here and start to patch up the worst parts. After Kurenai had dismissed Team 8 yesterday, the Hyuga heiress had spent the better part of the day to think about the events of her last mission. She had felt the need to analyze the whole mess and afterwards decide if her actions were adequate and justified. Otherwise the guilt she felt would never disappear and in the end probably would break her. The first question on her mind was if she did only react so harsh and aggressive because the person in danger was Naruto. Would she have done the same for Shino or her sensei? The kunoichi knew quite well that she harbored strong feelings towards the blonde boy. They started as admiration in her younger days, but soon grew into a full-blown crush. After the Jinchuriki had returned and was added to her team, you could say she was overjoyed. Since then, though, things had changed. First she learned of the boy's heavy burden, later she saw how ruthless he could be on missions, if there was only the slightest danger for his teammates, and finally they became friends. Her current feelings still exceeded friendship, that much was sure for her. Although how much more were they, and what was it that she wanted now? The Hyuga girl didn't know the answers to that, at least not now. Currently there were also more pressing matters than her love life. But those questions were not her main concern. Would she kill somebody in the same manner if Kurenai or Shino were in danger? Surprisingly, she found an easy answer to this. Yes, without second thoughts. Shino, much like Naruto, had become her friend. In fact, those two were probably her only real friends. Furthermore, Hinata had known Kurenai for a long time now. The woman had taken care of her even before she became her sensei. After she had confirmed for herself that she would have done the same for any one of her team, there was still another question to answer. Was it necessary to go for a killing blow? The Hyuga girl replayed the situation countless times in her mind. Naruto bending down towards the fallen enemy, then Ami taking the kunai from underneath her and lunging forward, and finally the last part, she herself slamming her Juken-empowered palm into Ami's chest to stop the attack. The strike would have hit Naruto straight into his torso, probably right through his intestines. Depending on how deep the kunai would have been driven into the blonde, the attack could have been deadly. Alone at this thought, Hinata shuddered. She couldn't say for sure if Ami had aimed to kill her teammate. However, it was at least a possibility. After spending hours with the whole dilemma, the brunette was almost certain that she had reacted in the right way. There were still some hints of doubt, but those wouldn't go away so fast anyway. Knowing that she had done what was necessary brought some closure, though. The remaining guilt and uneasiness would hopefully dwindle over the next days and weeks. Even if she did everything right, such feelings can't be washed away completely in just a few hours. With all those new knowledge, the second night of sleep after killing Ami was at least a bit better than her first. While she was still plagued by a few gruesome nightmares and woke up several times due to them, the girl got in more hours of the much-needed rest than the day before. Therefore today she almost looked normal again. She was still a bit paler than usual, though otherwise mostly fine. Now on her day off, Hinata didn't want to dwell anymore on those dark events. So she decided to spend most of the free time alone in one of the Hyuga dojos in the clan compound, working on some gentle fist katas. It was almost midday as a branch member entered said training place. The man bowed before the young female and then spoke. Hayashi-sama requested your presence in his study room, Hinata-sama. The brunette hurried back into her own room and shed the sweat-drenched training clothes for some fresh ones. It would be insulting if she let the head of the Hyuga clan wait for too long, so the brunette was in quite a hurry. A few minutes later the heiress entered her father's study room almost out of breath, but she quickly composed herself. As soon as the girl had set even one foot into the room, the stern eyes of Hayashi Hyuga bore into her. Sometimes you would think those cold, pupil-less orbs could stare directly into your soul, dissect your very core and read all your deepest secrets like an open book. Once Hinata had seen the strong gaze of her father on her, she lowered her own eyes towards the ground. Furthermore, the girl had a hard time to suppress herself from starting to fidget or doing any other of her usual nervous habits. Why you wanted to see me, Titu-san? Indeed, today I was informed of your last mission. Hayashi created a small pause before he resumed to talk. Your actions surprised me greatly, daughter. Did I do something wrong? The young kunoichi wasn't sure what she could expect from her father. He had deemed her a disappointment and failure long ago. Nowadays the clan leader would spend his days with politics and training his younger daughter, mostly avoiding Hinata, like she didn't even exist. Hardly, for the first time in years I must say no, was the reply the meek girl got. My opinion on you was that you wouldn't be cut out to be a useful ninja, you were always too kind-hearted and weak. However, it seems I was at least partially wrong with my assessment. While your opponent wasn't worthy of anyone who would call himself a shinobi nor a real Hyuga, your actions still showed that you probably possess some potential. Hinata was growing more and more flabbergasted during her father's speech. While for anybody else the whole tirade would sound downgrading, for the girl it was almost like praise. Hayashi Hyuga really thought his eldest daughter had done something right? She could see that he clearly wasn't impressed by her deeds, only greatly surprised. Still, that was something new for her. Probably one day you will be worthy of the name Hyuga and will bring honor to the clan. The clan had lowered his gaze towards some papers on his desk and started to scribble. This would be everything. You can go now to continue with your training. On her way back to the training ground, the young heiress was in deep thought. The talk with her father were the most pleasant words she got from him in more than many years, though still something about it left a bitter taste. One now would think it was that overall the whole speech sounded more like an insult than any kind of praise. However, that wasn't what had Hinata puzzled. Finally, the girl understood why she got this strange feeling. She was almost congratulated for killing somebody. Taking someone's life wasn't a feat she could be proud of, but her father thought it was. Now she finally had a bit of acknowledgement from her family, and didn't want it. Was the Hyuga clan really that bizarre? The free time for teammate had passed quite fast, and today all three genin were already waiting in the clearing that was training ground 42 for the arrival of their sensei. Unusually, Shino was the one who broke the silence between the teammates. My observations of you indicate that your condition has improved since 2 days ago, Hinata. Were you able to sort out what was troubling you during our short leave from shinobi routine? The question startled the girl somewhat, although she didn't feel the least offended that the Abirame brought up this topic. It only showed that her teammate cared about her well-being. Thank you for your concern, Shino. I can't say that everything is alright again, but it certainly is improving slowly. The brunette gave a small smile after she had replied. Naruto watched the exchange between the two squad members silently from the sidelines. The boy was happy that Hinata had already partially recovered from the ordeal. He could relate to her pains mostly because after his first kill he had gone through something similar, like most other shinobi. Only those with no real emotions didn't feel anything even during taking their first life. All those thoughts were washed away as the blonde Jinchuriki heard sounds of rustling coming from the vicinity. Did you two notice it too? He asked in a low voice, so only his teammates could understand what he said. Shino and Hinata gave a small nod and all three genin tensed. While they were still in the village there was always a possibility for an attack, that was a risk of the ninja life. Though nobody of teammates slipped into a fighting, to not alert the possible enemies. Without further ado, the Hyuga girl activated her bloodline limit to scan the surroundings for anything suspicious. Soon a bewildered expression could be seen on the brunette's face. And Naruto-kun, over there are 3 children hiding in a cardboard box painted like a rock. The girl pointed towards a group of bushes on the edge of the training ground. While his 2 teammates were quite puzzled about the whole situation, the blonde instantly knew who was watching them. Konohamaru, you can come out, we know you are there. He shouted across training ground 42. A small explosion could be heard and grey reek rose from behind the green shrubs. 3 children stepped outside the smoke, 2 brown-haired boys and a girl with slightly orange hair. All of them were wearing goggles not unlike the pair Naruto had during his academy days, and the 3 were coughing heavily due to inhaling the fumes from the detonation. I told you that was too much gunpowder, Konohamaru. The young girl scolded her accomplice. Said boy, although ignored her accusations masterfully, his attention was solely fixated on Naruto. Exactly what I expected from the man who is my rival. The Sarutobi spoke with awe in his voice. Naruto, care to explain why you agitated a small child to be your arch-nemesis? Because I expected better from you. asked the bug user his teammate. A small frown could be seen on the blonde boy's face. Man, you get this all wrong, Shino. The Jinchuriki waved his hand towards the brown-haired boy with the tremendous long scarf. This here is Konohamaru Sarutobi, the grandson of the old man Hokage. The other two, although I have no idea, never seen them before. He explained with a shrug. This are Moegi and Udan, my squad members, and Ai-san, replied the young Sarutobi boy proudly. Both mentioned children bowed before the blonde genin, and then the two shouted an energetic nice to meet you, leader. Naruto decked the brown-haired boy on the head. You are only an academy student, you don't have team members. Then he got into a small thinking pose. Shouldn't you be in one of Iruka-sensei's lessons by now? As if on cue, a shout of Konohamaru Sarutobi pierced the training ground and a fuming academy teacher stormed the clearing. Before anybody could react, the man packed the young delinquent on his earlobe and pulled him away, not even blinking an eye on the shouts of pain and outrage from the boy. The other two children followed suit, leaving a bewildered teammate behind. A minute later, Kurenai arrived. Do I even want to know why Iruka-san forcefully pulled the grandson of the third away from here? Receiving a round of furious headshakes from her genin, she continued to speak. Anyway, there is something important we must discuss, and it concerns this team. Do we have a problem, Kurenai-sensei? Asked a slightly fearful Naruto. No, nothing like that. I just came to a conclusion over the last 2 days, that is all, was the answer the blonde boy received. And it was true, the black-haired jonin had struggled with a decision for the last 2 days. The Chunin exams were not even a week away, and she had to decide if she would nominate them or bar them from entry. Almost all conditions she gave herself were fulfilled. They had done 3 C-rank missions, and both Hinata and Naruto had taken their first lives. She wasn't all that concerned about Shino's first kill. The ever-logical Aburame would be able to deal with it. She was almost sure of that. In 5 days from today on, the biannual Chunin exams are held. This time they will be hosted right here in Konoha, and I was contemplating on nominating Team 8 to participate. That is if you 3 want to enter, of course. The woman explained to her genin team. Naruto was the first one to react. He jumped up in joy and fiercely hugged his sensei. You really mean it? We are so going to be Chunin, Databeo. It was only then that the boy recognized what he had done, and he loosened the grip on the jonin. Apologetically he spoke. Sorry, sensei. I was just so surprised and happy. Are you sure we are already? Asked the shy Hyuga heiress. We are only rookies after all, sensei. There is no need to sell yourself short. I am really proud how far you 3 came since I have taken over your training. Surely I wouldn't nominate you if you weren't ready? The 3 genin could hear it in the voice of Kurenai that the woman was absolutely certain about her decision, and who were they to doubt their superior?